Nationwide safety drive launched as highways face flood, landslide threats along Kathmandu connectors. Tikapur temperatures cross 40 degrees Celsius in Nepal. APF train is faint as health warning issued. Nepal tea exports to India resume after diplomatic breakthrough. Foreign Ministry confirms removal of trade obstacles. Nearly 300 climbers reached top in single day as season gains momentum. Nepal eyes billion-rupee revenue boost. NATO welcomes US troop deployment to Poland, says security cooperation remains central. And Nepal crushed USA by 122 runs to end League 2 series on high note, boost standings with strong all-round show. Good evening, I'm Diksha Westhi and this is NTV World Primetime News. We are coming to you live from Kathmandu at 1900 hours Nepal time. Elsewhere it's 13:15 in London, 22:15 in Tokyo and just after midnight in Sydney. The details now. Nepal has launched a nationwide monsoon disaster preparedness campaign as authorities warn of increased risks of floods, landslides and traffic disruption during the rainy season, particularly along major highways connecting Kathmandu with other parts of the country. The Road and Vehicle Targeted Monsoon Disaster Reduction Campaign 2083 was officially launched from the new bus park in Gongobu by Additional Inspector General of Police Ishwar Karki, transport entrepreneurs and labor unions joining efforts to minimize road accidents and vehicle damage during extreme weather. Officials say weather forecasts issued by Nepal's Meteorological Division are now being closely monitored, while drivers and passengers have been urged to travel cautiously during heavy rain, as authorities also prepare to enforce stricter traffic management measures and expand online ticketing systems for public transport. Meanwhile, concern is growing in Dhading, where ongoing construction along the Prithvi Highway and Tribhuvan Highway has heightened fears of landslides and road blockages during the monsoon season. District authorities say special security teams, disaster response units and additional police personnel will be deployed along high-risk highway sections with emergency food, drinking water and shelter arrangements planned for stranded travelers, as nearly 17,000 vehicles use the routes daily and more than 70 vulnerable points remain under close monitoring. Now, a severe heat wave sweeping across Nepal's western Tarai region has disrupted daily life for the past week, with temperatures in Tikapur and other parts of Kailali climbing above 40 degrees Celsius. Authorities say 7 armed police force trainees undergoing basic training at the Armed Police Force Nepal Revenue and Industrial Training School in Tikapur fainted during a running exercise, with some airlifted to Kathmandu for further treatment, while others are receiving care at Tikapur Hospital. Residents say the intense heat and hot afternoon winds have reduced movement in markets and public areas, while parents are urging schools to operate only morning classes as children, senior citizens and chronically ill people face growing health risks. Doctors at Seti Hospital say the number of heat-related patients is increasing and have advised people to avoid ongoing outdoors during the hottest hours of the day, drink plenty of water and remain indoors as much as possible, as forecasters warn the heat wave could continue for several more days. Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says diplomatic efforts have helped remove recent obstacles affecting Nepali tea exports to neighboring India, following concerns over a directive issued by the Indian Tea Board. Speaking at a regular press briefing in Kathmandu, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lok Bahadur Paudel Chhetri said coordination between Nepal's embassy in New Delhi and Indian authorities led to amendments in the directive, making the export process easier for Nepali tea producers and traders. The ministry also announced that the third meeting of the Nepal-China Project Implementation Mechanism will be held in Kathmandu in June, with Nepal's Foreign Secretary and the Chinese ambassador to Nepal expected to co-chair the talks, while separate bilateral consultation meetings with Norway and Switzerland are also being planned. Meanwhile, the government says rescue operations are continuing for Nepalis trapped in illegal online scamming centers operating along border regions of Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos and Thailand, with 687 people rescued and brought back to Nepal so far, including 71 in the past 2 weeks alone. Nepal Rashtra Bank is set to collect 100 billion Nepali rupees in deposits from banks and financial institutions for a period of 61 days as part of efforts to manage excess liquidity in the country's banking system. The central bank said the deposits will be collected through a bidding process, with eligible institutions allowed to participate in amounts ranging from a minimum of 100 million rupees up to 50 billion rupees. Officials say the move is aimed at controlling inflationary pressure that can emerge when commercial banks hold more cash than required, while also helping maintain stability in interest rates across the financial sector. Under the arrangement, Nepal Rashtra Bank will return both the principal and interest payments to participating banks on May 20, according to the central bank. The latest measure follows a similar liquidity management operation conducted last month when the central bank withdrew 30 billion rupees in deposits from banks and financial institutions for 91 days period. Time now for a short break. We shall be back with more updates. Welcome back. More than 270 climbers successfully reached the summit of Mount Everest on Wednesday as Nepal's spring climbing season gains momentum following the official opening of the route earlier this month. According to Nepal's Department of Tourism, 274 domestic and foreign climbers submitted the world's highest peak in a single day, while a total of 494 climbers from 55 countries have received permits to attempt Everest this season. Officials say the largest number of permits this year were issued to climbers from China and the United States, with each climber typically accompanied by a Sherpa guide, bringing the estimated total number of Everest climbers this season to nearly 1,000. The Department of Tourism also reported strong revenue earnings from mountaineering activities, collecting more than 1.24 billion Nepali rupees in fees for expeditions on 30 mountains above 6,000 meters. Authorities say over 1 billion rupees of total came from Everest permits alone, underlining the continued economic importance of Himalayan tourism and high-altitude expeditions to Nepal's economy. Similarly, Kami Rita Sherpa, a 56-year-old Nepali climber, globally known as the Everest Man, who this week reached the peak of the world's highest mountain for a record 32nd time this week. rekindled concerns of overcrowding on the summit. Speaking to the media, Sherpa said the expedition this time felt a bit crowded and hopes the government limits the number of climbers and only lets in climbers of quality.
नेपाललाई चिनाउनु र नेपाललाई चाहिँ विदेशीहरूलाई चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ प्रमोट गर्नुपर्छ टुरिज्मलाई कसरी प्रमोट गर्नुपर्छ भनेर चाहिँ मैले चाहिँ लगातार निर्णय गर्ने हो आयो किनभने बोर्डको दायित्वमा धेरै कलङ्सहरू परेको थियो र यसलाई चाहिँ अलिकति भयो भने चाहिँ सरकारले चाहिँ अब यसलाई चाहिँ अलिकति नियन्त्रण गर्नुपर्ने
While the Chief Minister of Madhya Province, Krishna Yadav, has secured a vote of confidence in the Provincial Assembly after winning majority support in today's floor test. In the Assembly meeting, 62 lawmakers voted in favour while 36 voted against out of 100 members present, confirming his continuation in office following recent political alignment in the province. Support for Chief Minister Yadav came after the inclusion of the CPN-UML in the provincial government alongside the Nepali Congress, with backing also reported from other coalition partners in the Assembly. However, opposition parties including the Janata Samajwadi Party Nepal, the Janamat Party and the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party voted against the motion, citing dissatisfaction over the dismissal of JSP ministers and procedural concerns over the confidence vote. The outcome ensures continued political stability for the current coalition government in Madhya Province despite ongoing disagreements among key regional parties. Dailik's Nomule rural municipality has been declared a fully immunization assured municipality. The declaration was made after confirming that all children in the municipality have received the full set of required vaccinations according to national immunization standards. Health workers have been reaching even the most remote settlements to ensure that all essential vaccines are administered. The municipality has also expressed its commitment to continuing and strengthening this immunization campaign in the future. Namaraz Shahi, Chief of the District Coordination Committee of Dailik, expressed appreciation for the female health workers who have been actively working in remote areas to effectively implement the immunization program. And he thanked them for their contribution to protecting children's health. The Gandaki province government had announced nearly a year ago that the Gurung and Magar languages would be introduced as official languages for official government work. While the decision initially raised great hopes and excitement among local communities, disappointments are growing as it has not been implemented in practice. Rojina Rai with Himal Neopani brings the report.
Many districts of Gandaki province, including Sangja district, have a significant population of both the Magar and Gurung communities. In the province, the Magar community constitutes 18.8% of the population, making it the second largest ethnic group, while the Gurung community accounts for 11%, ranking as the fourth largest. According to the National Census 2021, Sangja district alone is home to 57,278 Magar population and 34,448 Gurung population. Among the indigenous mother tongues spoken in the region, Magar is the most widely used language, followed closely by Gurung. Based on this demographic reality, the Gandaki Provincial Assembly officially passed a bill in 2025 recognizing the Gurung and Magar languages as official languages for the government administration alongside the Nepali.
हुन्न भन्ने आवाज सुनिएन तसर्थ गण्डकी प्रदेशमा मगर र गुरुङ भाषालाई सरकारी कामकाजको भाषाको रूपमा प्रयोग गर्ने सम्बन्धमा व्यवस्था गर्न बनेको विधेयक सर्वसम्मतिले पारित भएको घोषणा गर्दछु.
The legislative milestone fulfills a long-standing recommendation of the Language Commission of Nepal. The Gandaki provincial government's decision to introduce these languages for official use was initially welcomed with high expectations. However, nearly a year later, there has been little visible progress in the implementation. In response, language training programs have begun in various villages, and local residents are preparing in anticipation of the language being officially adopted in government offices. Padam Gurung, chairperson of the Tamo Yo chose the National Council in Gandaki province, stated that the government policies and campaigns should only be introduced when they can be effectively implemented.
गण्डकी प्रदेश सरकारले गुरुङ र मगर भाषालाई आधिकारिक रूपमा चाहिँ अगाडि बढाए तापनि निर्णय गरे तापनि अहिलेसम्म कुनै किसिमको चाहिँ आधिकारिक धारणा आइसकेको छैन। सरकारको तहबाट चाहिँ यस्ता किसिमको धारणाहरू प्रष्ट रूपमा ल्याउँदाखेरि हामी अन्य परेका छौँ। तथापि तर हामीले जिल्लामा चाहिँ गुरुङ र मगर भाषालाई तयारी गर्ने कक्षाहरू चाहिँ सञ्चालन गरेर तयारी अवस्थामा बसिरहेको अवस्था छ।
Many members of these two communities appear disappointed with the authorities' level of seriousness. Despite this, the communities are preserving their rich cultural traditions and are taking various initiatives to safeguard them for the future generations.
Now, international news coming up next. For now, a short breather. Welcome back. You're watching NTV World Primetime News. Now the international update. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has welcomed U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that 5,000 American troops would be deployed to Poland, reversing an earlier decision to cancel the planned deployment. Speaking ahead of a meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Sweden, Rutte said the alliance was moving toward a stronger Europe and a stronger NATO that would gradually become less dependent on the United States. In a social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump that the deployment decision was influenced by his relationship with Polish President Karol Nawrocki, a nationalist ally, amid tensions over European support for the U.S. during the Iran conflict. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio acknowledged that Trump's disappointment with some NATO allies over their response to the Iran war would need to be addressed during talks with alliance partners in Sweden, but also reassured that the troop adjustments were not punitive in nature.
You saw the president's announcement last night with regards to Poland and deployment. That said, obviously the United States continues to have global commitments that it needs to meet in terms of our force deployment, and that constantly requires us to re-examine where we put troops. This is not a punitive thing. It's just something that's ongoing, and it was pre-existing, all these recent reports and tensions and so forth. So that's a process that will continue that I think in
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is traveling to China at the invitation of the Chinese government, with a visit also marking the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. During the visit held from tomorrow till May 26, Prime Minister Sharif is expected to begin his visit in Hangzhou in Zhejiang province, where he will chair a Pakistan-China business-to-business investment conference focused on information technology, telecommunications, energy storage and agriculture.
The visit is expected to further strengthen and deepen political trust, strategic coordination, expand practical cooperation, and consolidate the long-standing friendship between the two countries.
The trip will also mark the third consecutive high-profile visit by a foreign leader to China, following recent visits by Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. At least 25 people, including police officers and civilians, were killed on Thursday in two separate attacks linked to organized crime in northern Honduras in Central America, according to the authorities, as the country prepares a crackdown on escalating gang violence. The deadliest attack occurred in the municipality of Trujillo, where 19 people were shot dead and with high-caliber weapons in an area affected by long-standing disputes over palm plantations and drug trafficking routes. Security Minister Gerzon Valansky said that the victims appear to have been executed with rifles and shotguns in a region long dominated by armed groups linked to narcotics trafficking and palm oil operations. In a separate incident near the Guatemalan border in Omao, police said 5 officers and 1 civilian were killed during a clash between an anti-drug unit and suspected traffickers. The attacks came shortly after Honduras legislature approved new anti-crime measures authorizing greater military involvement in public security and allowing gangs and drug cartels to potentially be classified as terrorist organizations. Thousands of protesters clashed with police in Bangladesh after crowds attempted to seize a man accused of raping a 4-year-old girl, according to the authorities. Police said suspect Monir Hossain had been detained by local residents in Bangladesh's second largest city of Chattogram and was being handed over to officers on Thursday when tensions erupted among nearly 5,000 people gathered at the scene. Crowds surrounded a police vehicle in an attempt to take custody of the suspect, prompting security forces to deploy reinforcements and fire tear gas while clashes continued for nearly 6 hours. This comes amid growing public anger in Bangladesh over a recent rise in reported violence against women and children, with demonstrations also taking place in the capital Dhaka demanding justice for the victim. Earlier, Prime Minister Tariq Rahman met the girl's family in Dhaka and also pledged swift justice. Now, more international news and sports update on other side of this short break. Stay with us. India's Power Ministry has urged careful use of electricity a day after breaking records for power generation during an intense heat wave in world's most populous nation. Peak power uses this week has broken records for 4 straight days, with temperatures hitting 47 degrees Celsius, according to the India Meteorological Department. It had earlier noted that the surge in demand appears to be linked to the greater uses of cooling appliances. Meanwhile, workers scooped up dead fish floating on the surface of the Sanjay Park Lake in the capital, New Delhi. The fish died as the water shrank after days of relentless summer sun. Temperatures in the Indian capital hit 43 degrees Celsius today. Thermal power, largely coal, accounted for 62% of generation on Thursday, with solar making up 22%, wind and hydropower taking up 5% each, and the rest coming from other sources. An Ebola outbreak in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo has spread to the nearby South Kivu province, remaining fears over the growing spread of the deadly virus in the region, partly controlled by the Rwanda-backed M23 militia. The country's National Institute for Public Health said the outbreak has caused 160 suspected deaths among nearly 671 probable cases, including 64 confirmed Ebola cases and 6 confirmed fatalities. Efforts to contain the Ebola outbreak have been hampered by years of conflict between the Congolese army and M23 rebels, restricting access to health workers and humanitarian agency, while also reportedly placing the armed group under pressure as it has never had to deal with serious epidemic like Ebola. Meanwhile, an isolation center for Ebola patients has been set up at a university in Bukavu, in the province of South Kivu, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. More than 1 million Muslims are gathering in Saudi Arabia for the annual Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca, with the regional tensions linked to the Middle East conflict looming over one of the world's largest religious gatherings. Saudi authorities said around 1.5 million pilgrims are expected this year, with the ritual taking place from May 25 to May 27, drawing Muslims who are required to perform the pilgrimage at least once in their lifetime if physically and financially able. Meanwhile, a military parade was held in Mecca where Hajj security forces displayed readiness plans and conducted drills to ensure the safety of pilgrims during the pilgrimage. The Hajj is the fifth and final pillar of Islam, along with the declaration of faith, 5 daily prayers, obligatory charity, and fasting during the month of Ramadan. With that international update, now we move on to sports update. Nepal national cricket team ended its ICC Cricket World Cup League 2 Tri-Series campaign on a high note after defeating top-ranked United States national cricket team by 122 runs at the Tribhuvan University International Cricket Ground. After losing the toss and being asked to bat first, Nepal posted a strong total of 317 for 8, powered by Ishan Pandey's 84 runs, while Dipendra Singh Airi added 59. Captain Rohit Paudel scored 46 and Asif Sheikh contributed 43 runs. Nepal's bowlers then dominated the American batting lineup, with leg spinner Sandeep Lamechhane taking 3 crucial wickets, while Lalit Rajbansi, Gulshan Jha and Dipendra Singh Airi claimed 2 wickets each to seal a comprehensive victory. The result marked Nepal's second win over the United States in the series, after earlier defeating the Americans by 6 wickets, and helped the team climb 2 places in the League 2 standings. With 3 wins from 4 matches in the Tri-Series involving Scotland national cricket team and the United States, Nepal now sits 5th in the League 2 table with 24 points from 28 matches, while the United States remains on top with 38 points and Scotland stays second with the same number of points from 32 games. Now, Nepal's women's national cricket team continued its strong form in Malaysia with a 7-wicket victory over Malaysia women's national cricket team in a practice match ahead of the Asian Games qualifiers. Batting first in the T20 match played in Malaysia, the hosts were restricted to 82 runs for the loss of 9 wickets in 20 overs, with Aina Hamiraj Hasim scoring 17 and Dhanushree Mohunan adding 15 runs. Nepal's bowlers delivered an impressive performance as Kavita Kuwar, Riya Sharma and Rubina Chhetri claimed 2 wickets each to keep Malaysia under pressure throughout the innings. In reply, Nepal comfortably chased down the target in 16 overs, losing just 3 wickets, with Samchana Kumari Khadka top scoring with 39 runs, while Kavita Kuwar contributed 19 runs. The victory marked Nepal's second consecutive win over Malaysia this week, after also defeating the host in the opening practice match played on Wednesday. And before we wrap up, here's a reminder of our top stories. Nationwide safety drive launched as highways face flood. Landslide threats along Kathmandu connectors. Tikapur temperatures cross 40 degrees Celsius in Nepal. APF trainees faint as health warning issued. Nepal tea exports to India resume after diplomatic breakthrough. Foreign Ministry confirms removal of trade obstacles. Nearly 300 climbers reached top in a single day as season gains momentum. Nepal eyes billion-rupee revenue boost. NATO welcomes U.S. troop deployment to Poland, says security cooperation remains central. And Nepal crushed USA by 122 runs to end League 2 series on high note, boost standings with strong all-round show. That's it for this edition of Primetime News. Our next bulletin will be at 2200 hours Nepal time. Do join us through our social media and get the latest updates from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. Thank you for staying with us. Have a wonderful evening ahead.
Good evening and welcome to Business World. I am Siksha Bhatrai. This week, global markets were shaped by rising geopolitical tensions, shifting trade alliances, the growing race for artificial intelligence dominance, and fresh concerns over inflation and energy prices. From Washington and Beijing to Brussels, Seoul, and New Delhi, governments and major corporations faced mounting pressure over trade, technology, and the global economy. Let's begin with one of the week's biggest developments in international trade relations. China and the United States signaled a possible easing of trade tensions this week after both the sides agreed to expand agricultural trade and reduce some tariffs following high-level talks in Beijing. The development is being closely watched by global markets as businesses hope for improved stability in supply chains and international commerce. The agreements remain preliminary, but officials from both the countries say negotiations will continue in the coming weeks.
China and the United States have agreed to expand agricultural trade through tariff reductions and tackle non-tariff barriers and market access issues, China's Commerce Ministry said on Saturday after this week's summit in Beijing. The agreements are preliminary and will be finalized as soon as possible, the ministry said following U.S. President Donald Trump's visit. China's farm imports from the U.S. still face an additional 10% levy after last year's rounds of tit-for tariffs sharply curtailed trade, which fell 65.7% year-on-year to US $8.4 billion in 2025, according to US Department of Agriculture data. The Commerce Ministry said both sides aim to promote two-way trade, including in agricultural products, through measures such as reciprocal tariff reductions across a range of goods. It did not specify which products.
From global trade, we now turn to Europe, where rising tensions in the Middle East are beginning to affect food prices and farming costs. The European Union has pledged support for farmers facing soaring fertilizer prices linked to instability in the region. Officials warn that prolonged disruptions in energy and fertilizer markets could have wider consequences for inflation and global food security.
The European Union has pledged support for farmers and efforts to safeguard food security as it moves to address rising fertilizer costs linked to the ongoing Iran war. EU Agriculture Commissioner Christoph Hansen said the bloc would step in to help farmers cope with the economic pressure caused by surging input prices, which have been driven higher than instability in the Middle East.
And first, we will support farmers and food security in the short term. We will provide immediate relief, much needed, when the bills start coming in for the farmers. The Commission will deliver a substantial financial support package to affected farmers before summer, and this is our commitment, and we will present it in June with the amending budget.
Brussels has faced growing calls from member states and agricultural groups to intervene as fertilizer price spikes threaten to push up overall food costs across Europe.
In Asia, concerns over disruptions in the global semiconductor industry eased after Samsung Electronics reached a last-minute agreement with its largest labor union. The deal prevented a plant strike that could have affected chip production at the world's biggest memory chip maker. The dispute centered on wages and bonuses as workers demanded a larger share of profits driven by booming demand for artificial intelligence chips.
The largest labor union at Samsung Electronics has called off a planned strike after reaching a last-minute agreement with the company management over wages and bonuses. The deal has eased concerns over possible disruption to the global semiconductor supply chain. The strike, set to begin on Thursday, could have affected chip production at Samsung, the world's biggest memory chip maker. The union, representing nearly 48,000 workers, has suspended the action while members vote on the agreement between May 22 and 27. The dispute entered on how profits from rising demand for artificial intelligence chips should be shared. Workers argued that employees producing lower-end chips for firms such as Tesla and Nvidia also deserve higher bonuses. Under the tentative deal, Samsung will introduce a new performance-linked bonus system. Employees will also receive additional rewards in company stock, which cannot be sold for several years. Talks had nearly collapsed earlier this week before South Korea's labor minister intervened to help broker the agreement.
Now to the United States, where attention is turning to the future direction of the world's largest economy. A new leadership transition at the U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to shape monetary policy, interest rates, and global financial markets in the months ahead. Analysts say investors will closely watch how the incoming leadership handles inflation and economic growth amid ongoing global uncertainty.
After 8 years of friction with the White House, a global pandemic, and a fight with the high inflation, the U.S. Federal Reserve begins a new era with former Governor Kevin Warsh soon to be sworn in as chair. It will be a new era for President Donald Trump as well. He soon will no longer have departing Fed Chair Jerome Powell as his favorite punching bag, although Powell will remain a Fed governor and will continue as central bank leader on a temporary basis until Warsh is sworn in. Warsh, Trump's pick for Fed chair, presumably brings a fresh start in relations between the Oval Office and the central bank. He is expected to explore various regulatory and policy changes to shrink the large balance sheet. That could lead to a protracted discussion with limited progress in the short run.
Meanwhile, Indian billionaire Gautam Adani scored a major legal victory this week after U.S. authorities dropped criminal fraud charges against him and some officials linked to the business empire. The move is expected to improve investor confidence surrounding the Adani Group's international operations. The developments also highlights changing approaches within the United States towards corporate investigations involving foreign businesses.
The U.S. Department of Justice has dropped criminal fraud charges against Indian billionaire Gautam Adani and some officials of his firm, days after he agreed to settle a separate civil case. Adani Enterprises, his group's flagship firm, also agreed to pay $275 million to the U.S. Treasury to settle a separate investigation into alleged violations of sanctions on Iran. According to media sources, the Adani Group has now resolved all 3 legal cases against it in the U.S. This will pave the way for Adani to travel to the U.S. without risk of legal proceedings. Media reports say the dropped charges reflect a broader move away from prosecuting foreign bribery cases under Donald Trump's administration. Adani, 63, is one of the world's richest people, worth $82 billion according to Forbes. His Adani Group is one of India's largest business conglomerates with interest in sectors including energy, ports and airports.
And staying with major global business deals, aerospace giant Boeing confirmed that China has committed to purchasing 200 aircraft following recent talks between Washington and Beijing. The agreement marks a significant reopening of the Chinese market for Boeing aircraft orders. Industry analysts say the deal could provide a major boost to the aviation sector and strengthen broader economic ties between the two countries.
Aerospace giant Boeing confirmed that China had committed to purchasing 200 aircrafts following announcements made by the U.S. President Donald Trump during his visit to Beijing earlier this week. The company said the agreement marked the reopening of the Chinese market to Boeing aircraft orders and described the trip as successful. Speaking aboard Air Force One on his return to Washington, Trump said China had also promised up to 750 aircrafts in total if the initial 200-plane arrangement proceeds successfully. Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg, who was part of the U.S. delegation to China, added that the 200-plane commitment was an initial step and said further commitments were expected in the future.
In the technology sector, competition in the growing wearable devices market intensified this week after Google unveiled its latest smart glasses design. The move places the company in direct competition with Meta as tech giants race to integrate artificial intelligence into everyday consumer products. Analysts say AI-powered wearable technology could become one of the next major battlegrounds in the global tech industry.
Google has unveiled the design of its new smart glasses, marking its return to a market it previously attempted to enter more than a decade ago without success. The device is expected to go on sale later this year and positions Google in direct competition with Meta, which currently leads the segment with its Ray-Ban smart glasses. Meta's smart eyewear has reportedly sold more than 7 million units, giving the company a strong early advantage in the growing wearable technology market. The new product reflects renewed competition among major tech firms to develop everyday augmented reality and AI-powered wearable devices. Analysts say the launch signals an intensifying race to integrate artificial intelligence into consumer hardware beyond smartphones.
In another sign of shifting global economic partnerships, Sweden and India announced a new strategic cooperation initiative aimed at boosting trade, investment and technology collaboration. The agreement focuses on sectors including clean energy, innovation and industrial development. Officials say the partnership reflects growing efforts to strengthen economic resilience amid global uncertainty.
Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has announced a strategic partnership with India following his meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Gothenburg, aimed at significantly deepening bilateral economic and investment ties. The initiative is also seen in the context of India's broader engagement with Europe, including the free trade agreement signed with the European Union in January. Under the agreement, both countries have committed to doubling trade and investment flows over the next 5 years, with a focus on innovation, clean energy, technology and industrial cooperation. The agreement also gains added significance amid rising global uncertainty triggered by the ongoing Middle East conflict, which has heightened concerns over energy security and disrupted trade routes.
Elsewhere in South Asia, India raised fuel prices this week as the ongoing Iran conflict continued to disrupt global energy supplies. The increase has added pressure on consumers and businesses already dealing with higher living costs and inflation concerns.
India's state-run oil companies has raised petrol and diesel prices by more than 3% as the Iran war continues to disrupt global energy supplies and increase pressure on the country's economy. The hike, the first since the conflict began in February, comes amid concerns over rising import costs after Iran's near-total blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, a route through which India normally imports nearly half of its crude oil. Oil companies said they have been suffering losses due to soaring global crude prices, while the government has also raised cooking gas prices and introduced austerity measures aimed at reducing fuel consumption and conserving foreign exchange reserves. Authorities in Delhi announced partial work-from-home measures for government employees and urged residents to limit private vehicle use as fuel import costs continue to strain public finances. Meanwhile, India has increased imports of discounted Russian crude following a temporary U.S. sanctions waiver, but Indian Foreign Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar criticized unilateral sanctions, warning they disproportionately impact developing economies.
And here in Nepal, concerns over the wider impact of the global energy crisis were also highlighted at the United Nations. Officials warned that rising fuel costs and disruptions in trade routes could slow economic growth and push millions more people into poverty worldwide.
The United Nations has warned that disruptions to global energy and supply chains are threatening economic recovery and pushing millions deeper into poverty, with developing countries facing the greatest risk. At a special meeting of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, held at UN headquarters in New York on Thursday, ECOSOC President and Nepal's permanent representative to the United Nations, Lok Bahadur Thapa, said more than 32 million additional people worldwide could fall into poverty due to rising energy prices, increasing food costs, and weakening economic growth.
This is not only an energy challenge. It is a development challenge. It is a financing challenge, and above all, it is a test of our collective ability to deliver on the promise of the 2030 Agenda.
The meeting, titled Safeguarding Energy and Supply Flows, Supporting Global Development Through International Cooperation, focused on the growing impact of instability in global trade and energy corridors. Officials said the disruptions have slowed economic growth, increased inflation, and undermined progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Speaking on behalf of UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, Under-Secretary-General for Economic and Social Affairs Li Junhua called for energy and commodity markets to remain open, transparent, and predictable, warning that further supply disruptions could worsen the global crisis. It is said global GDP growth and trade are expected to contract while inflation has increased, potentially reversing long-term trends of lower prices. Amid such backdrop, the discussion carried particular significance for countries like Nepal, which remains classified as a least developed country, or LDC. Although it is scheduled to graduate from LDC status in November of 2026. Nepal and other vulnerable economies remain highly exposed to external shocks, including rising fuel prices, supply shortages, and slowing global trade due to their dependence on imports and limited fiscal capacity. The ECOSOC meeting brought together UN member states, international financial institutions, civil society representatives, and the private sector to discuss ways to ease fiscal pressure, strengthen economic resilience, and reduce the impact of global spillover effects on developing countries.
And finally, a move that is expected to benefit tourism and travel. The European Union has introduced a new visa scheme allowing eligible Thai travelers to receive longer validity Schengen visas. Officials say the measure will simplify travel procedures and strengthen people-to-people ties between Thailand and Europe.
Thai nationals applying for short-stay Schengen visas in Thailand were granted access to longer validity multiple entry visas under the EU's Visa Cascade scheme, according to Thailand's Foreign Ministry. The decision was approved by the European Commission on May 8 for eligible Thai passport holders. Under the scheme, travelers with a record of lawful use of previous visas became eligible for progressively longer validity periods, including 1 year, 2-year and up to 5-year multiple entry visas. Officials said the system reduced repeated applications, costs, and administrative delays. The ministry clarified that the policy was not a visa waiver and that applicants still needed to apply through standard procedures. Thailand stated that the move reflected strong EU confidence and was based on low migration and security risk assessments.
Around the world, markets are reacting to fast-moving shifts in trade, ongoing energy pressures, and the growing influence of artificial intelligence on industry and jobs. And while AI is driving innovation and efficiency, it is also quietly reshaping industries and raising concerns about the future of employment, even within large manufacturing and technology ecosystems like the Samsung. As economies adapt to this new reality, the balance between progress and disruption will remain one of the key stories to watch in the weeks ahead. I am Siksha Bhatrai. Have a wonderful evening and thank you for watching Business World.
The gorgeous temple of Changu Narayan holds greater significance among the 4 Narayan temples located in different cardinal points of Kathmandu Valley. It is situated on a magnificent hilltop about 16 kilometers northeast of Kathmandu in the Bhaktapur district. Changu Narayan is known for its majestic temple complex, full of magnificent artworks in stone, metal, and wood. As an important heritage site of archaeological and cultural importance, with a history of nearly 1700 years, Changu Narayan was designated as UNESCO World Heritage Site in October 1979. By then, it also received the attention of international observers abroad. One of the first substantial epigraphic evidences of Nepalese history was found in the temple premises consecrated by Lichavi King Mandev, dating back to 464 AD. It shows that Changu Narayan was already developed as an important sacred place long before his time. There are various myths and legends regarding the origin of Changu Narayan. As detailed in the Vansavalis, Changu had already been established as a sacred site around 3rd century AD. The Ichangu inscription of Vijaya Kamdev, dated 1199 AD, informs that the temple was built by the king Haridatta Varma, happened to be 9th generations before Mandev. The time of Haridatta Varma is estimated as early as 325 AD. During Lichevi period, Chango Narayan was also known as Dola Shikhar, which refers to a mount or hill in the shape of Doli. Gopal Raj Vansavali and the Chango inscription also mention it as Changu, a Newari word that refers to swing like hill. But the evidences show that this particular place was popular as Chango Narayan from the earliest time, and the same name exists in the society till present. This two-storied temple is of basic Nepalese design with possible emphasis given to masterful ornamentation. The temple may have passed through series of restoration. The present structure was probably constructed in the 17th century. Chango Narayan is regarded as one of the masterpieces of Nepalese temple architecture. The older elements have been incorporated during the restorations.
Hello there and welcome to a brand new episode of Insight. Today we're talking about literature, culture and the ideas that outlast borders. From the Himalayan Literature Festival to the larger questions of poetry, translation, gender and Nepal's civilizational depth. We are going to explore how writing continues to shape public life and keep memory, identity and imagination alive. We have with us Indian-born poet, often dubbed as the world-renowned Himalayan poet, the one-man academy and Himalayan Neruda, Yuyutsu Sharma. So welcome to the show. It's good to have you here. You keep traveling back and forth, and here in this particular moment you are here for the Himalayan Literature Festival. Let's start with the festival itself. Where did the inspiration for this second edition, I believe, of the festival come from, and what can the participants expect from it?
Well, it's a long story. I've been traveling a lot for the last 2 decades. I've been teaching here, and then I quit teaching and I started traveling. So I've been traveling for 2 decades now. So while traveling, I met all these writers and poets, and I hung out with them in Europe, in London, in Frankfurt, on other parts, Italy, Paris. And then I went to America, and I made friends in Europe and California, in New York. And so all along, I had known so many writers, and I thought, why not invite them here? So I've been planning this for a long time. But then one of my friends in New York, who runs this New York Writers Workshop, they go every year to a different country to host their residency and their workshops. So they said, oh, you want to come to Kathmandu? I said, why not? And we were about to do it in 2019, and then the pandemic came, so we had to wait. So finally in 2024, we had this session in collaboration with New York Writers Workshop and White Lotus Bookshop, which is run by my wife, Srijana Bhandari. So we had a great success because we had about 40 writers, and we took them to Pokhara, to Chitwan, and we had workshops here in Kathmandu Guest House, and we were, all over, and they were exalted, they're going to Pashupati and all these places, the Changunarayan. And so it turned out to be very good, and the word spread, and then more people wanted to come. And so I said, okay, we have to do it again. So, and they said, do it, and I didn't do it last year, but then I thought, okay, let's continue it every year. So this year we are hosting, fortunately we were good enough to have great faculty to teach. So we got America's 22nd Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith, who is also Pulitzer Award winner and Chancellor of American Academy. And she's a hugely popular figure in America, a household name. And then we have Paul Muldoon, a legendary writer who's like, who's Oxford professor of poetry and taught at Princeton, and also former editor of New Yorker. And he's also he's like a legend. And so these, and then we had Martin Doyle from Ireland, who's a book editor of Irish Times. And we have Tony Barnstone, who is a professor in California and a poet and a ghazalist and a memoirist and a hugely famous scholar. And then we got Tina Chang, who is the first poet laureate of Brooklyn, and she teaches. She's been teaching in America for several decades, 2 or 3 decades. So I got all these writers, and I thought, okay, we want to come to Kathmandu. And Kathmandu is very exotic for people in the West. Kathmandu has this great generosity, this image of great ancient archival value. And people grow up dreaming of coming to Kathmandu, joining the hippie trail, going to Everest. Also the people of Nepal, they are so beautiful and so full of warmth, and it has spread a great image across the world. And that's why this is happening from 29.
Before we get into the diverse range of accomplished writers that are in Kathmandu for this festival, I just want to ask you about the inspiration behind the name of the festival itself.
Well, because I am known as Himalayan poet, and also it's taking place in Himalayas, and most of my writing is about the Himalayas. And also I go there. I think when I travel, people think that Himalayas is, is the only place. That's so easy to recognize to talk about Nepal. Otherwise, where is Nepal? You know, is it China or is it India or you know where is Nepal? Some people is Naples. You know.
But do you think that kind of limits the festival's idea into a single identity rather than broader civilizational idea itself?
Well, it's just a name. It's a name to stick to and easy for people to remember, and an umbrella kind of thing. It's just I think what's in a name, as Shakespeare says. You know, if you put you know, cauliflower, say it is rat, it wouldn't matter because cauliflower or dandelion is a dandelion. So named, but I think it helps us get attention and kind of quintessential Nepalese image, and also the Himalayan vigor that we are exploring,
while not being limited to the identity.
No, I don't think so. It does. Does it? Would you think so?
Let's talk about the diverse range of course, accomplished writers that you have been able to manage to bring in Kathmandu right now. What kind of diversity and messages do they bring to the festival, to the table?
Well, there are you know, scores of writers who are, in addition to the faculty, you know, that they are coming. There are not just the faculty who will teach workshops, but then in the festival we have all these very famous writers, including Ravi Shankar, Annie Finch, Annie Casey, Kathleen Willard, Christina, you know, Prater, and several from India, like the editor of Hindustan Times, Manjula Narayan, she is coming. So they are writers from all different countries. From Australia, Annie Casey is coming. So these are like 40 writers who are established writers themselves, but then they also be taking part of the workshops, and so it's very European or American thing to be like take a master class or you know, to take a workshop. In Nepal, like faculty has to be like very senior, and then the students have to be very young. It's not like that, you know. Anyone who is like these writers are all accomplished writers themselves. But like I would join some of the workshops, like a Paul or you know, Martin or Tina. So it depends on what you want to learn. So it's not just that there's a faculty and then there are visiting writers. So it's a kind of mix, and that's how it takes.
And what happens in the room with all these people in the same space?
Yeah. So like my workshop, like we have, let's say Tina Chang's workshop is on healing. Tessie's thing is on consciousness and poetry. So and the others join, and so we write there. You know, it's a kind of, she gives us a prompt, or she induces us to write. It's a kind of way of learning and you know, of mastering honing your art, and seeing how what's behind the creative process. And the theme of the festival is ecstasy, healing, and creative writing in New World Order. So I want to relate this to our Nepalese traditions of shamanism and healing. You know, shamans, the tantras, tantrics, the preachers, the sadhus, the yoga masters. So I want to relate how in the West now there is an increased interest in the psychotherapy, in the art of healing. Like shaman will play the drum and the percussion of the heart, and you have this leads you to the other world, the otherworldly consciousness. And similarly, writer does the same. He with a pen he writes, and he creates this. You know, shaman describes the inner turmoil of his patient through the ritual objects. You know, the sacrificial rooster or drum. And similarly, writer dramatizes the drama of the characters of his mind through his. Both are similar in a way. The creative process is similar. I mean, shamanism is the first spiritual discipline in the history of mankind, even before other disciplines, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism came. Shamanism was there, and the first spiritual discipline. So it's very crucial, and we have live. It's a living religion. It's a living phenomena in Nepal. The shamanism, though it's considered a kind of witchcraft, and it's defamed, and it's kind of. I would say like, there are bad doctors and good doctors. Similarly, there are good shamans and bad shamans. But then some shamans get kind of maligned. But overall, shamanism is a very pristine, a very indigenous and very extremely original practice. Because if you go to a doctor in the modern world, I mean, they will test your body and they will do you X-rays and they will test blood tests, and they stop where the body stops. They won't go beyond if everything is okay, but still you're having a pain. What's behind it? So I think the shamans go there. They start where the body stops. So they are mind-related illnesses. So these and similarly the writing, poetry, fiction, like chants, mantras. The mantra is a one-breath unit. So I said this mantra in one breath, and breath is what connects you to the cosmos. So it's a healing impact. The prayers. So we are trying to explore how creative writing, creative process is related to these practices, which are as ancient as mankind. Even before birth of Buddha, the shamans existed. Buddha took some of them, like green Tara, and left out the rock goddesses who demanded sacrifice. So it's a kind of very pristine idea, and I think West is trying to understand it. And so we are trying to see what's behind this whole idea of creative writing. How writer works and how a shaman or a tantric or a religious, or a holy man, a saint. So they were trying to explore these hidden areas in this. That's the theme. That's what we are focusing. We have panels, we have master classes, we have workshops, and so we want to bring some of the shamans into this festival. Some of the tantrics or some of the holy people who practice the art of healing.
And they will be there?
Yeah, they'll be there. We'll have an altar and all that.
So when we talk about the length and depth of this whole aspect, we're of course talking about creative writing as well. What for you would determine a good quality creative poetry?
I mean...
because there are many writers, right? And there will be participants in this festival who will want to learn about doing it as best as possible.
Well, I know there's no sure-shot formula. This is something that moves, the thing that moves. So and also that kind of touches you. And also there are we have to. I mean, that's what the whole thing is about. What is good and what's not, and how good a writing should be, and what to avoid, what to use. So that's the whole process that we'll be discussing, like fiction workshop, memoir workshop, poetry workshop, so non-fiction workshops. So we will try to these experts, these are our faculties, these writers who are teaching in Harvard or Princeton or Columbia or California would be sharing their creative process, the art of writing, an art of experiencing things, and also the creative process that goes into making of a novel. Like Jean, we have Jean who's a very famous novelist. So she'll be taking the fiction. She'll talk about her process. How Jean Banff, she's a great novelist. HBO had a movie on one of her books called The Plot. Nicole Kidman and all, they were. So she's hugely popular. She will be there, and she will be discussing our art of fiction.
Do you think, when I asked you what makes a poetry or a creation perfect, do you think it also depends on the audience, the frame of mind that they are? Yeah,
I mean, like some novels which are classic, they're hardly readable. Some of like Melville's books, were ignored, and nobody read Herman Melville. Even Moby Dick was, a failure in the beginning. People didn't understand it, and then later it became the world classic. So there are examples. I mean, so everything depends on. Some things are instantly popular, instantly they appeal. Some things they make a history in the years to come or decades to come. Like Gopal Prasad Rimal in Nepal, was ignored and kind of considered a kind of crazy guy, and he, I think, at the moment is one of the best writers. That at par, that could be placed in front of a world audience. So it depends, there are political situations, there are geological, geographical, There are like censorship. There are all kind of trouble. So, but I think good writing somehow will tear open these curtains of obscurity and reach the real people over decades. So it has often happened. But I think first thing is the intensity you put in writing a thing and honesty behind it is actually main thing. The response and if it's popular or not is a secondary thing. So that's the whole idea.
I'm glad you mentioned about Gopal Prasad Rimal, also known as Adhunik poet. How do you view modern poetry at the moment? What is it like?
Yeah, that's why my whole idea is that I think Nepal is a country of poets only. Poets and poets, you know. Even this room I can host a poetry reading. But everybody, I'm sure your cameraman and you people around, even your director is a poet. Everybody. In Nepal, a poor beggar, a potter, a businessman, a millionaire, a king, a politician, a prime minister, everybody is a poet. Nepal is the only country in the world, except Ireland, where everybody is a poet again. But I think Nepal is a special, because people they think with the heart. People have this great passion for nature and for writing. And you know, I go out, I go to Europe, and I go in this kind of, like in your subway, and you know, these people are black clothes and sitting very glum. And I come to Nepal, and people like the whole happiness, you know, and the ritual in the face, you know, the bliss, the happiness, you know, that's visible, and they are in the ritualized kind of state of ecstasy. They are walking around, and you know, so I'm delighted. That's why I love them. Nepalese people are so beautiful, and go in the mountains, and if not in Kathmandu, go to the mountain, and people are so ritualized, so happy, and talk to you as if you're a long lost friend. So that I think that is the great generosity of Nepalese life and Nepalese people, and that has to be captured. And there's a great bank of generosity of Nepali people that I think shouldn't be squandered. So my idea is that poetry should be the main target of tourism in Nepal. I think Nepali poetry itself is a great. And somebody I met, he said Nepal has 3 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and tourism. And tourism also of poetry, because poetry is the main passion of Nepalese people. I think that's why no matter what they say of fiction, you know, there's that what is being written, and there are kind of a lot of talk about it and how they kind of promote it and they try to present it as a very saleable thing. But I think the soul of Nepalese people, the soul of Himalayas lies in the poetry of Nepal.
I think when you say that, I almost saw the birth of a poet in myself, but I know I would fail miserably on it. What do you hope the discussions on Nepali literature and Nepali art in this festival achieve beyond the festival halls?
So we are having several panels. We have especially women writers meet and women writers panel. We have, you know, this festival is dedicated to Guru Prasad Manali, who is the pioneer, a legendary figure, father figure in Nepalese fiction. He wrote great stories, and so we are dedicating the entire festival to him. And similarly, we will have several panels on Guru Prasad Manali, as well as we want to have a panel on contemporary Nepalese fiction, which is kind of very shadowy. So we have the illusion and reality. You know, they try to push it and make it very commercial and try to sell it. I think actually it's the poetry which is more vital than they are like. It's kind of made a market out of it and try to say. But they are all writing kind of very second grade kind of work, imitating the Western classics or bestsellers or Nobel Prize winners or Booker winners. So they're kind of copycats. So I think the poetry is its own right. It's a truly, essentially, it's quintessential force and very original. I think poetry should be promoted, and poetry should be the heart of any endeavor to present Nepal elsewhere in the world. And that's why we have a few prominent poets, and most of actually exciting poets will be here from different parts of the world. So I think we need to work on Nepalese image. But the thing is, poetry, they say it doesn't sell, and then they don't promote poetry. And because everybody is a poet, and everybody, you know, it's very crazy phenomena. Everybody publishes a book and gives it out free. So the market is very different, and government doesn't help, and there's no grants, no donations, know, people, even everybody, even a wealthy man or a poor man, everyone wants to publish a book of poems and give it out to everybody. Can you believe it?
That's also one of the challenges, right, of being a creative writer. You have to make a living. And when you talk about many writers are copying the Western patterns, you have to make a living. So that's one of the challenges. Not many are as successful as the accomplished writers that are in Kathmandu right now.
Yeah, but because it's Western art. Fiction is Western. It's not rooted in Nepalese soil, Nepalese soul. So they mimic, since even B.P. Korala and all that, early even Guru Prasad Manali is more under the influence of Maupassant or Chekhov. So the shadow of Western giants is very heavy on Nepalese fiction. Whereas in poetry, from Mahabharata, Ramayana, Vedas, and we have our own voice. And the poets like Rimal, like Leknath Paudel, these are like great poets. So in their own right, they don't need to be compared with anyone else. There's no shadow of poets hanging, of world poets. And although in the later era, in the 60s and 70s later, they came under the influence of some of the poets, like especially fiction in Nepal is under the influence of Western, especially Russian formalism, more realism. So most of the Nepalese fiction is written under either Russian masters or in like Kafka, Camus, and that kind of. And now the Marquez, they are trying to follow that and try to show So it's not very original, most of you, if you see it. But poetry, I'm saying, that's why I insist, the soul of Nepal lies in its poetry, in its original and its voice. Because since centuries, it's in the DNA of Nepalese people, of South Asian people. Small communities, even in like local languages, Newari, Tamang, even the ethnic groups have their own language, their own culture, their own poetry. And the song, which is unsung, unheard here, which is limited in their own language, the folklore and the shamanic chants. So there's a great whole world behind Nepalese poetry and why everybody is a poet. It's a great phenomena, and that is being ignored, saying, "Oh, you're a poet, you don't sell," or So this is one of the craziest critics, I think, said, "Oh, you should not write poetry, you should write fiction only," which is a horrible thing to say. So I think in Nepal we should invest. In Europe, I think most of the poets who published they get grants from the government. I haven't seen any book being published without grant from in UK, Europe. But here there's no grant. And imagine a guy selling his mother's earrings or his wife's nose ring or bangles and publishing book of poems. He's selling his land. Can't see the passion and madness of being a poet here. I mean, it's unprecedented. Nowhere in the world you see a phenomenon like this. So I think, and the force and commotion that the creative phenomena is so overwhelming and so original and so dramatic. I think, and these so-called commercial publishers trying to, and they are small and they don't matter much in the world stage. But still, I'm saying they discourage the poets. Is saying that, well, poetry doesn't sell. Poetry doesn't have to sell. Poetry its whole idea is to win the hearts, not to sell. But that narrative is being tarnished by these petty publishers and these newfangled these copycats of Western. They want to give advance royalties, which is meager and nothing. So it's a very strange kind of thing, and poetry is suffering. And poets are feeling discouraged and ignored.
When you say that, is it your intention to protect originality and what's organic in here? Or is it also a disdain towards fiction? Because a large number of audience do buy fiction more.
No, but I have written a novel myself. I have a novel. That doesn't mean that I should. But what I'm saying is what is good in Nepal.
What needs to be preserved?
Yeah, needs to be preserved. And also, fiction is not good. It's all copycats. See, they are third grade writers. Most of them. If you have read the Western classics, you wouldn't read them. Most of the if you read Nepali fiction, you know that, I mean, beginning from the old times, the O. Henry, Lawrence, some of them are it looks like they translated and they forgot to write the name of the original writer. Except even the title they can't change. Like Quiet Flows of Dawn, there's exact same title. So, we should write a novel, we should publish a novel, but then there has to be a good. Because it's always under the shadow of these looming Western giants. Either they are Booker Award winners, or they are either great classics. So that and that's all. The thing is, not many books arrive here. So most of them read all these popular books which arrive. Most of them haven't even heard the very genuine names of US, UK, Canada, because most of the translations are not available of Western European or Latin American. Like, for example, the surreal, you won't find any reference to surrealism, wherein Latin America is so popular, Not many novels have been written with the influence of surrealism. Surrealism is so crucial to Latin American fiction, writing.
Two questions here. Do you see the imaginative escapism that fictions provide as of any value at all? And second, what do you think of these barometers like Man Booker Prizes that determine or make novels and writings popular among the larger audience around the world?
Yeah, it's a market. It's a market thing, and they want to sell their books here. So they want novels from each country, like every year. So there's now, with the digital revolution and with the phone dependence, there's a big scale line. The books are not selling, and bookstores are shutting down in America or Europe, and it's a lot of trouble. So they are expanding, and they're trying to find a market. And so these like in India is a big market, China is a big market, Taiwan is. So these so it's a whole marketing thing. But I'm not against it. I'm saying it's good. I've written a novel. I'm trying to promote it. I'm trying to sell it. But I think we have to be careful about that. What is at stake? Poetry is at stake in Nepal, and poetry is people stopped writing poetry and they start writing a novel. It's going to become a very fashion thing. It's a fashionable thing that you don't write poetry, you write a novel and try to get some attention. Which is
so there's a commercial angle to it, to the argument. Let's get back to poetry, of course. Politics and borders have often divided people, but literature can cross those borders. How do you see poetry and writing helping unite emotions, memory and civilization?
Yeah, poets, they say the poets and sadhus, the holy people, and rivers have no caste, no nation. So they the river starts from China, comes to India, goes to Nepal or to Pakistan, and goes to India or goes to the sea. So these rivers and holy people have no. So the language, poetry is like that. So
do you think it's a form of soft diplomacy?
Of course, I mean the whole subcontinent. Like Ramayana, it has been translated in Bhanubhakti Ramayana. In India, there were maybe more than 100 translations of Ramayana. The same book, the same story. And in some Ramayanas, in fact, there's one of the Ramayana. The Ravan doesn't have even a head; he's a headless man. Or Sita is very close kind of daughter of Ravana. And in Bhanubhakti Ramayana, Sita is a kind of very homely kind of. She's not like a princess. She's going to the water well and bringing water. She's very kind of local mountain kind of lady. So it's very beautiful how they have adopted, each country, each region, each language has adopted this great epic into their own versions. So that's why the importance of poetry in that way, and that it has different, each country, each region has their own, the small circles like Malayalam, Kannada, Punjabi, Telugu, Nepal. Now here in this Nepali, they have their own, the same book they are dealing, like Meghdutta, or like all these classics they are rewriting. So poetry is like also the idea of individual talent and authorship is new. First the Mahabharata, Ramayana, they just wrote and they added the chapter and they left. They never mentioned their name. Vyasa, some guy, so the authorship is a 20th century, 19th century idea that you are an author. So Brahmins, the priests, they wrote the book and they added the chapter to Mahatmya. and that was a spiritual work. It's a holy job. So what do? You just write and you add it to the great book, Mahabharata or Ramayana or Upanishads. So it's nothing of that I am the author, I am the great writer, I need to deserve this award. No, it's a humble job to just write and add to the whole treasure, the great body of work that's being already available.
In your observation so far of the literary ecosystem in Nepal, how do you think we can, the government can, the state or the society support young writers to continue?
Yeah, so I am actually working with young writers now with the festival. We have this lot of new, we are Prodigy Group, a very young, energetic, thing. And also I go to different campuses. I go to MIT, Kathmandu Model College, Kathmandu Himalayan House, Himalayan White House, and all these other schools. I was talking to British College School, and also talking to these Aramb, all these. I'm trying to get these students there, and we'll send some of the writers to these schools, and they will interact with these Nepalese writers and see if they are good writers, and they can ask them questions and interact with them. So we are. So I want these are helping us, all these younger groups, the Prodigy and others. So I'm trying to mix up with them and trying to see what's happening in the local. There's a slam poetry, there's a spoken word, and there is story writing, there's fiction writing, there's memoir writing. So it's all happening. But I'm going to the more lower level, the younger generations, and trying to see how it's shaping. So this festival will help us in exploring the creative currents that are prevalent in Nepalese society, especially in the younger generations.
Do you think gender shape literary voice, themes, and the way stories are told and also received?
It's very interesting that in our parts, from the sense, like Shiva is half Parvati, half the Ardhanarishwar. In our culture, there's always been gender equality. So only that the later hierarchical and more Brahminical order kind of destroyed the entire concept of So especially in this festival, we're trying to have women, like we have a special thing on women writing. And I think women, actually there's a problem with the Nepalese women writing, is that they try to come. They come when they're young, they come in our circles. But then the taboos, and they get married, and then they vanish for 10 years. So when I tried, and they come back, they have lost most of their vitality. The marriage, because I know one very famous writer, so she was young, she was energetic. So I wanted to call her to the reading, one of the events. I called her, her mother-in-law picked up the phone and said, "Oh, who are you?" I said, "I'm a writer and I want to talk." And then, "Why do you want to talk to my daughter-in-law?" So I was kind of, I said, "Yeah, okay." I dropped the phone because she said, "Who is this guy? Why is he trying to call my daughter-in-law? And why he wants her to come to poetry reading?" So for women, it's very challenging. The social structure of so most of the women they can't really progress because the social structure is such. They get married, they for 10, 12 years they have children and they send them to school, and also it's a very male dominated society. So women are like there's a lot of gossip, and so it's a lot of shaming, and so it's not very conducive. Women who are writing, I admire them a great deal, and that's why we're having women special sessions and women panels, and I think something has to be done about Nepalese women writing, because structure is such that they have to. I mean, just like I came here, if I were a girl, it will be very difficult for me to run this kind of festival because my in-laws, my husband will think it's crazy. What is she doing? So it can be very intimidating. Upper class is okay, but for middle class or lower middle class, especially to come from a mountain village, come here, establish yourself, get education. It's a whole nightmare. So it's really, I admire women who are writing. I salute them.
Well, change is a gradual process. Let's be hopeful about it. You also translate literature.
Right.
When a text carries local culture and maybe social tensions as well, and references that may be unfamiliar or sensitive to other environment, how do you preserve its spirit?
Well, first of all, translation is art of the impossible. It's not possible to translate a poem or emotion. So they say that it's not 2 plus 2 is not 4 there. So First of all, translation is a kind of humble art. So when I'm not writing my work, Robert Lowell says that in the spring of my life, I write my poetry. In the winter of my life, I translate. So when you are not active yourself, it's good to, also you learn a lot when you're translating other writers. So it's a great thing to translate, to learn and to master your art of writing. I translate novels from Chinese with the help of English, and from Slovenia, and from Hindi, or I've translated Nepalese poetry into English, Nepali fiction into English. I run this magazine called Pratik, which publishes all these translations. But I think the art, the question that you asked is that, of course, it's not possible.
How do you navigate?
Yeah. So the whole idea is that you have, only a poet can translate. Like if you have poetry, only a poet can translate poetry, because he will know an equivalent of that thing. And also, poetry is metaphors. So, like English teacher wouldn't know how to make a metaphor, because they're all subtle intricacies of writing a poem. So I think if a poet translates, who knows both the languages, he'll be able to create, this metaphor, or the inner world that's involved with the music and with the words. So I think especially metaphor is very important. Sometimes, like when you cannot, like I always give the example, like Rimal ko poem. Rimal has poem. He says, "Kranti le mero chhak tarne baki nahi cha. Maile kranti le salam kari sake." Ab chhak tarne baki is like, it's a metaphor. So unless you are a poet,
how do you write it?
Yeah. So it's the revolution has to make. I translate the poem. So it has to. I have to have its. It has to quench it has to satisfy the hungers of my mind. So some metaphor is needed there. So when I translate a poem, I had to create a metaphor. So only a poet can do that. So only, otherwise this Kranti chhak tarne baki nahi cha. So chhak tarne actually has to be translated in English. Like you have to imagine that if Rimal were writing in English, what would he have written? So that kind of parallel consciousness. That's why is writing.
It's a wonderful example, but it's also a general one that anyone can relate to. But have you come across challenging translations that was sensitive to some other region it was going to?
Yeah, I mean, even readings, like some poems I read in America or New York or in London, people are falling off the chair, And here I read I can be unnerved. Some relatives will be very upset, like some words. So
exactly.
It can be. So I have to pick up poem, like I go to a school, and I can't read a poem that I will read in New York. So some poems you have to be careful. It's. And some poems that I read here, with people laugh off their heads here, probably in New York they won't understand, So it can be, that's the whole art. So when I go to a reading, I go to these countries. So I'll first look at the audience and decide which poems I will read. I will see audience, what age, what kind of women or men, and what kind of, if they know English or they don't know French. So I have to understand sensibility, what kind of class. So as a speaker, I have to take into consideration all. Then it will be. I'm a commercial speaker. I'm a writer, so I have to make my living with my writing. So I go and sell my books, sign my books, or get invited to these festivals. So I have to be good. So it all depends on how you understand the situation and how good you are and what you have in your quiver. All kind of stuff that you must have.
It's a really fast-paced world that we live in, especially with the digital space. Do you think consumption has changed? Has audiences' taste changed? Or is it easier these days to access to the audience and vice versa?
Yeah, it has done both. It's it's a whole internet and all. I said in the beginning, like 30 years ago, I said, this is a whole corporate thing. It's all in few hands. And they are using your thing, and it's the attention, the page of the flash,
attention span,
or the span, like the quick, the posts and as you put them up, and so it's and you forget next day, So it's very damaging for the mind, and So, but it somehow it helps also. Like I could travel. If there was no internet, I probably wouldn't be able to become a Himalayan poet because I could connect through net and I could go there. But then again, there is and then there are poetry events, like there are online things you can promote and you can sell yourself. So it's both. But I think it's very damaging because it takes so much, it consumes so much of your time, and so your mind becomes a blank slate, and so it's kind of it's crazy. So I wish to return to that early. Like in Himalayas, I go trek in the mountain, I see this guy on the phone now. Oh my God, it depresses me so much. In the wild, nature, where I trekked for 5 days, and then I see this guy, chatting on the phone. The whole solitude, the idea of being lonely and having a conversation with yourself, exploring your soul. Himalayas has been a great place of self-revelation, self-understanding, of discovering your own self. Yogis and sadhus and holy people have gone up, and Mahabharata, after they die, winning the war, they all go up the Himalayas and die. So it's a great place of spiritual solace, because there's silence. With the internet, with all this, silence is impossible.
Over the course of time, of course, you've witnessed a lot of evolution of poetry and literature itself. How do you see the new generation accommodating it and maybe evolving it in the days to come?
Yeah, I was a little depressed in the middle of my whole journey, but now I see that this is a new enthusiasm. Even in US, the new bookshops opening, and the respect for the book returning. In the subways, people started reading books again in London, in Europe. So there is a kind of revival. People understand now that the whole corporate, fun, this whole how they are taken for granted, especially COVID. People understood that how. I have this book called Lost Horoscope, so I tried to discuss that. How the pandemic made them realize that how lonely you are, and how you need to have a soul to understand yourself and the world around you. So I think I see a strange change now. I think the book is being, hopefully I'm right, the book is being revived, and people are taking interest in poetry, in creative arts. And I think my festival is, Himalayan Literature Festival, is a kind of attempt to generate a generation of writers and have a place where we can have solace, we can have quiet moment, we can celebrate silence of the giant Himalayas. And that's my mission.
Before we bid you goodbye, what are you currently engaged on? What themes are you exploring, and what's pushing you as a writer?
Right. So I just finished my book on pandemic. I just came out. It's called God's Messy Workplace. So we are going to launch it in the festival. You're welcome to join us. And also I've just finished a novel on my stay, my travels, and especially my story, because my father was a great devout follower of Naga sadhus, sadhus, holy people. So at one time he tried to donate me to them. He said, Guru, I have 2 sons, take him. And I gave him to him. The sadhu refused. He looked at me, he said, he's a good boy, send him to school. If he hadn't said that, you have no idea what it will look like today. So this novel begins there. And that's the whole, my entire story, journey as a travel, is about that character. Also, it's very magical. It has Yati as a main character in my novel, which is now, I'm trying to sell it to the agents in the US and in India and elsewhere. And so writing a novel is not a crime, but ignoring poetry is not good. So that's my whole thesis.
It seems like the prophecy was real and it proved well.
Right.
And when can your followers expect the arrival of your latest creation? I
have some publishers in New York who want to publish it. So I'm waiting for probably a bigger. So I think 2000 probably 27 it should see the face of publication. Yeah.
Congratulations in advance for the festival, and also all the best. It was wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you. Namaste. Yes.
Well, the Himalayan Literature Festival and Writers' Workshop is happening from May 29 to 5th of June in Kathmandu. With more than 75 writers from all over the globe, the theme for this year's festival is ecstasy, healing and creative writing in the new world order. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Inside. Until next time.
People simply observe and take pride in artists and their promotion of Malaysian culture internationally. But nobody cares how they struggle just to survive and maintain their sanity. The waves of stress that are constantly present and how it impedes their creative minds. The life of an artist is like an uneven curve. It never moves smoothly through a straight line. As an artist herself, Shima tries to make her life easy and its journey smooth sailing in a straight line. But this does not happen. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in art and design with a major in pottery and ceramics in 1982, Shima started her own business. She did not only do batik paintings on fabric and other soft materials, but also took part in painting, designing and production of batik garments. All these activities did not make her happy and she could not sustain herself financially. Then she decided to concentrate on paintings.
Things that you can comfort with, you can live with it. Because for the beginners, they have to find things and it's not easy to get all the materials. So first, you have to survive. Second stage, after you survive, you want to find yourself. There's a long way until that you become famous because of something in the painting itself. So it's comfort because it comes like it's not a day or a month or a year. It's going to be continued, maybe until you die.
Shima has been concentrating her creative works on paintings for nearly 2 decades. Her artworks mainly reflect traditional houses as imagery. She wants to spill the colors of her childhood experiences onto the canvas consciously.
This is from the experience before that you have. You see things. You see something that inspired you, that is the one that comfortable with, so that you just go on with that subject. Like a house is something that we experienced before. We live in those kind of houses, traditional, that which is in our childhood. We grown up there, and it's in the memory because we don't have it anymore.
Within the imagery of traditional houses, Shima does not only want to have nostalgic gratification, but also represent Malaysian multiculturalism in her paintings.
If you are Malay, there was the influences in the houses. If you are Indian, there were some images that shows. So this is what all about Malaysian multicultural. We have huge things to explore. It's something about our country. It's something about Malaysia in a way of you create it.
Devotion, patience, tolerance, commitment and inherent creative capacity are the fundamental qualities of an artist. Being an artist, Shima always feels the challenges of creating a new painting.
I think the challenge is the artist itself. How they're going to create good work, good artwork that you can show that to the public. That is the most challenging, because whether the public can accept it or not, and you can think whether you can continue with this career or not.
Once the painting is completed, Shima has a happy moment. It is a kind of great winning.
Happy moment, you've been rewarded. You won something. You've been, like I said, rewarded means whether you winning some contest or you've been rewarded because of your artwork being chosen for some reason of, your painting was in that certain place, which is people are looking up at it.
Being an artist is not always good. On many occasions, Shima has had very bad experiences within her society.
At the first step, you've been ignored because they say that your artwork is not going anywhere. It's very disappointed.
Like Shima, 21 other artists have been working in the artist colony. The colony is a traditional village-based art center where artists from different fields and expertise do their works. There are 11 government-subsidized wakafs, open-air wooden shelters built for artists within the craft complex in Kuala Lumpur. In the village, artists do not only create artworks, but also conduct various educational activities, such as teaching, training, and observational programs.
That's how you get the color, okay? Wherever you do, you must.
Just a comment on my art.
Every artist working in this village has their own style and creativity. They have been working with different mediums, forms, and compositions. Their different artistic talents create their distinct identity. However, they have a common practice of promoting the Malaysian way of living and culture.
I'm the one who did the painting about art, Malaysian naive art, to promote Malaysia, especially when the tourists come over here, what they can bring back to visit Malaysia while they are on tourism. So to present my country, so they know what is Malaysia they have.
My subject is more to flora and fauna, and this is, as you can see here, this is more to semi-abstract artwork, and I'm really concentrate on texture series, and this is considered my latest series.
It's my painting normally my environment. Normally my family like this. This my family, my son, my daughter look together. The title is together. That's mean well, I create a watercolor on a theme of the mangrove swamps of Malaysia. I travel from north to south just to record all the pictures, all the picturesque view of the mangrove. And back at home, I'll record it on my paper with watercolor.
A lot of Malaysian artists, they use a lot of images from surrounding, like historical buildings, like the traditional costume, something like that. So I think that show that Malaysian art scene, they have their own style.
Artists have their own particular perspectives and viewpoints to observe the surroundings and lives. They are born with certain natural gifts and talents. They also develop exceptionally critical senses. They do recreation of the reality onto canvases. Their artworks are like mirrors that reflect different dimensions of local reality. The tourists, however, prefer local motifs in the artworks.
It's quite interesting to see some modern art
this complex is very interesting because there's a lot of different types of art and craft.
This is very different, and I particularly like her use of colours in the repeated motifs that she's got on display here.
I very like the Malaysian art because this one is very colorful and sketch also very beautiful.
Although the artists have been contributing a lot to promote the Malaysian culture internationally, they are under the wave of extreme stress. They have been struggling with hard times just to survive.
Not enough income to survive, to get the sourcing, like selling the painting, to make you alive. That is the most important in their mind. Besides, they want to produce a good work.
Audience has to have to appreciate Malaysian art more.
Di Malaysia ni dari segi pasaran mungkin belum luas.
To survive as an artist is quite tough at the moment now. It depends on the how you tackle the customer and how they like it your painting or not. That is the only way.
To struggle a lot to keep on survive and keep on doing your work, because many artists you can find they do halfway.
The major buyers of Malaysian artworks are foreign visitors. However, due to severe global economic recession, the official statistics of the Malaysian Tourism Ministry show that the inflow of foreign tourists are very unpredictable. This has immensely affected the sale of artwork. Artists have no choice but to bear the pain.
We have to think about to promote Malaysian art. Malaysian artists have to try to find the funding, so and from that way they can promote themselves. If we want to ask government to help us, in that way also can, but the government have a lot of things to think about, so artists should think their own way. I think like Malaysian government have to must start to collect artwork from the artists, like their government department. They have a lot of department. They have to start to buy artwork.
Artists like Shima are struggling against a dire situation to overcome. After investing their golden age in the field, artists are continuously creating their arts and seeking the support from society. Shima has taken these circumstances as a school of life. She has a strong commitment and beautiful dreams to be the best artist possible.
You have to sell the painting to survive, to get the money to buy the food or to pay any bills. But then when that problem is solved, or you get a way to solve the problem, I think it's going to be, you learn like in a school, but this is not a formal school. It's like a life school. I want to create something of your own brand, of your own mark in your country. You are not being comparing with other artists. That is the most that most artists wanted. But it's not going to happen in one day.
Artists and artworks are an integral part of any society. Despite the extreme stress on their minds, they document the contemporary history of social reality. They also make many significant contributions to social transformation, critiquing evil elements and innovating new ideas. The life of an artist is never smooth like a straight line. However, one cannot imagine life without art.
This is The World This Week, your weekly roundup of the latest international events and updates. This is me, Bhavna Casey, and in this edition, we bring you the stories making headlines across the globe, from high-stakes meet to major political developments, geopolitical tensions, cultural celebrations, and remarkable feats. We have all that you need. Let's begin with China, as Beijing hosted two of the world's most influential leaders in a packed week of high-level engagements. China wrapped up a remarkable week of diplomacy as it hosted the leaders of the United States and Russia in back-to-back visits that underscored Beijing's growing role at the center of global geopolitical engagement. Beijing emerged this week as the center of the high-stakes global diplomacy, hosting back-to-back visits by United States President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in a rare display of China's growing geopolitical weight amid intensifying global rivalry. Both leaders received elaborate state welcomes from Chinese President Xi Jinping, complete with military honors, ceremonial receptions, and tightly choreographed symbolism. It is said the two visits reflected sharply different strategic objectives and highlighted Beijing's efforts to balance competition with Washington while deepening coordination with Moscow. Trump's visit focused primarily on stabilizing increasingly volatile U.S.-China relations strained by trade disputes, export controls, and tariffs. Chinese officials described the talks as an attempt to build constructive strategic stability, signaling Beijing's push to prevent direct confrontation while preserving room for strategic competition. Putin's trip to Beijing centered on reinforcing China-Russia strategic ties at a time when Moscow remains heavily reliant on Beijing for diplomatic support, trade access, and energy cooperation amid continued Western pressure over the war in Ukraine. Putin's trip concluded with a formal joint statement and the signing of dozens of cooperation agreements covering energy, technology, trade, and media. Russian officials also confirmed renewed momentum behind the long-delayed power-up Siberia 2 gas pipeline project aimed at expanding Russian gas exports to China. The visit highlighted China's growing role as Russia's key economic and diplomatic partner amid Western sanctions, while both sides emphasized long-term strategic alignment in a shifting global order. From shifting power equations in Beijing, we now turn to ongoing tensions in the Middle East, where the United States and Iran remain locked in a complex standoff over nuclear concerns and the control of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. and Iran stuck to opposing stances over Tehran's uranium stockpile and controls on the Strait of Hormuz, although U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there had been some good signs in talks. U.S. President Donald Trump said the U.S. will eventually recover Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which Washington believes is destined for a nuclear weapon, though Tehran says it is intended purely for peaceful purposes. Rubio told reporters that a diplomatic solution would be unfeasible if Tehran implemented a tolling system in the Strait of Hormuz, but he added there had been some progress in talks.
But obviously, we're dealing with a system that itself is a little fractured, so the Iranian system, but that said, there'll be a couple visits. I understand, I believe the Pakistanis will be traveling to Tehran today, so hopefully that'll advance this further. The president's preference is to do a good deal. That's his preference. It's always been his preference.
It is reported, though, no deal has been reached, but that gaps have been narrowed, adding that Iran's uranium enrichment and Tehran's control over the Strait of Hormuz remain among the sticking points. Trump also railed against Tehran's intentions to charge fees for use of the strait, where a fifth of the world's oil and natural gas transited before the war. Trump has said he is ready to resume strikes on Iran, which the U.S. and ally Israel first launched in late February, if he does not get the right answers from Iran's leadership. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have warned that renewed attacks would trigger retaliation beyond its reason. We move across the Atlantic, where relations between Washington and Havana have taken a sharp turn as the United States announced criminal charges against former Cuban leader Raul Castro. The U.S. has charged former Cuban leader Raul Castro with conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals and other crimes over the 1996 downing of 2 planes between Cuba and Florida. The case accuses Castro and 5 others in the shooting down of the aircraft belonging to a Cuban-American group Brothers to the Rescue and killing 4 people, including 3 Americans. Castro, now 94 years old, was then the head of the country's armed forces and faced international condemnation over the crash. As the U.S. looks to exert increasing pressure on Cuba's communist rule, it called the charges a political maneuver devoid of any legal foundation. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly sought to exert pressure on Cuba and has openly discussed toppling its communist regime. President Trump also raised the prospect of potential U.S. military action against Cuba, saying he would be happy to act where previous administrations had not.
Cuba, look, it's a failed country. Everybody knows it. They don't have electricity. They don't have money. They don't have really anything. They don't have food. And we're going to help them along, and we're going to help them because number one, I want to help them. I don't want to on a humanitarian basis, but we have the Cuban American population, much of it living in Miami and Florida. That's a great group of people, amazing group of people, industrious, they're great Americans. They've wanted this to happen. They want to go back to their country. They want to help their country. I hope they're going to stay here, but they want to go back. They want to invest in their country and, see if they can bring it back. Other presidents have looked at this for 50, 60 years doing something, and it looks like I'll be the one that does it, so we'd be happy to do it. We want to open it up to Cuban Americans where they can go back and help.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said Cuba possesses a national security threat to the United States and the likelihood of a peaceful agreement is not high. The U.S. has imposed fresh sanctions on Cuba and imposed an effective blockade on oil shipments, leading to a fuel crisis there and leading to extended blackouts and food shortages. We now say focus to global health concerns as World Health Organization declared an Ebola outbreak in Africa a public health emergency of international concern. The announcement comes amid rising pressure from conflicts, climate change and defunding cuts to the agency. The head of the World Health Organization WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has warned of escalating global health threats, including an Ebola outbreak in Africa, as he opened the 79th World Health Assembly in Geneva, while also highlighting mounting pressures from conflicts, climate change, and defunding cuts to the agency. He also stressed on the danger of the current Ebola outbreak in Africa, which the WHO declared a public health emergency of international concern on Sunday.
And as you know, yesterday, I declared a public health emergency of the international concern over the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that has already spread to Uganda. I will say more about both outbreaks, hantavirus and Ebola, in my address to member states this afternoon, which is the technical report which I will in the afternoon. These two are just the latest crises in our troubled world. From conflicts to economic crisis to climate change and aid cuts, we live in difficult and dangerous and divisive times.
The WHO previously said the outbreak did not meet the criteria of a pandemic emergency, but warned it could be much larger than what has been detected so far. The Health Assembly that brought together delegations from WHO member states sets global health policy and advances the organization's strategic priorities. We now return home to Nepal, where veteran climbers Kamirita Sherpa and Lakpa Sherpa have broken their own records as the 2026 spring climbing season gets underway, marked by historic achievements and a strong influx of international mountaineers attempting peaks including the Mount Everest. The 2026 spring climbing season officially began after a 14-member rope fixing team reached the summit of Mount Everest, successfully opening the route for hundreds of waiting mountaineers. Nepal's officials confirmed that the summit route from the south side was fixed on May 13 after weeks of delays caused by unstable ice formations in Khumbu Icefall, allowing hundreds of climbers to begin summit pushes towards the world's highest peak. The season has also highlighted the continuing dominance of Sherpa climbers. Kamirita Sherpa, known as the Everest Man, broke his own record set last year with a 30-second climb, and the other, known as the Mountain Queen, broke her own women's record with an 11th summit. The record climbs came during a busy summit window in which hundreds of climbers reached the peak under favorable weather conditions. The season has also renewed attention on Everest traffic management as large numbers of guided expeditions and support teams. From the peaks of Everest, we now move to developments in South Asia, where India is pushing ahead with large-scale infrastructure expansion in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands amid environmental concerns and local opposition over land acquisition and rehabilitation terms. India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, located in the southern reaches of the Bay of Bengal near Indonesia and Thailand, are emerging as a strategically significant maritime hub as the government advances a large-scale infrastructure expansion plan aimed at boosting regional connectivity and economic influence in the Indo-Pacific. The Union territory, comprising more than 830 islands, of which only around 38 are permanently inhabited, is divided into the Andaman and Nicobar groups and occupies a critical position between the Andaman Sea and the Eastern Indian Ocean along key international shipping routes. As part of this push, construction activity is underway on a remote island in the archipelago, where bulldozers are clearing pristine forests to make way for a proposed $9 billion megaport, airport and urban settlement. The project is intended to strengthen India's maritime infrastructure and is widely viewed as a strategic counterweight to China's expanding investments across the Indian Ocean region. However, the development has sparked local opposition over environmental concerns and compensation issues. Residents have criticized the relocation terms with affected individuals, saying their lives feel completely destroyed and that the land compensation is inadequate compared to what is being taken. We now turn to a very different scene in the Middle East, where thousands of couples gathered in Tehran for a large-scale mass wedding ceremony.
A mass wedding event was held in Tehran amid rising regional tensions, combining traditional marriage ceremonies with strong patriotic displays. The program, called Sacrifice for Iran, brought together around 1,000 couples linked to the state-backed Jan Fada initiative. Iranian authorities organized simultaneous ceremonies across multiple locations in Tehran on Monday evening, including a gathering for 110 couples at Imam Hossein Square. State-affiliated media promoted the event as the celebration of the Celestials, featuring national flags, portraits, and symbolic displays. Officials presented the campaign as evidence of strong public support for the government. However, the initiative also faced criticism online, with skeptics questioning participation figures and alleging that the program's statistics were inflated.
We shift to a more unusual story from South Asia, where an unexpected internet sensation has emerged in Bangladesh as a rare albino buffalo has gone viral online, drawing crowds and widespread attention for its uncanny resemblance and unusual appearance. The 700-kilogram buffalo owned by Bangladesh's farmer Ziauddin Mrida has gained public interest due to its unusual appearance, particularly its long flowing coat of hair, which is rare among domestic buffalo breeds in the region. The animal was nicknamed Donald Trump by a family member, a reference to its distinctive hairstyle that resembles the US president's signature look. The buffalo quickly became a short-term local sensation, with visitors arriving in increasingly large numbers to take photographs and share content across social media platforms. Local residents describe the scene as unusual, with a steady foot traffic to the farm as curiosity about the animal spread beyond the immediate community. Despite the widespread interest, the buffalo is expected to be sacrificed as part of traditional practices in the coming days, according to its owner. Now to Japan. At the Sanza Matsuri festival, traditional irezumi tattoos, still viewed with caution, were displayed in public as tattooed participants take part in the celebrations. Crowds gathered in Tokyo over the weekend for the annual Sanza Matsuri festival, one of Japan's largest and most prominent Shinto celebrations, where participants and visitors filled the streets in a display of traditional culture, processions, and portable shrine parades. The festival is also notable for being one of few occasions in Japan where irezumi traditional tattoos are openly visible, despite their continued social sensitivity in parts of the country due to long-standing associations with organized crime. While attitudes towards tattoos have gradually softened among younger generations and international visitors, they remain restricted in some public spaces such as baths and gyms. The Sanjay Matsuri, however, provides a rare setting where tattooed participants can openly take part in celebrations, reflecting the complex balance between cultural heritage and modern social perceptions in Japan. From cultural celebrations in Japan, we now move to the natural world in Southeast Asia, where Vietnam's forests are in full seasonal bloom, with thousands of butterflies on a display.
Cuc Phuong National Park in Vietnam entered its peak butterfly season in April and May, when hundreds of species filled the forests and created a vibrant natural display. The seasonal phenomenon attracted around 3,000 to 5,000 visitors daily as butterflies gathered along humid and swampy forest trails during their breeding cycle. Forest rangers explained that the insects were drawn to mineral-rich swamp areas that supported their feeding habits. They say the diversity of plant life directly supports the large variety of butterfly species. Officials also noted that the mass appearance of butterflies reflected strong biodiversity and healthy ecological balance within one of Vietnam's oldest protected forests.
From nature's spectacle in Vietnam, we shift to human strength and endurance in Myanmar, where regional athletes competed at a major bodybuilding championship in Yangon. 39 bodybuilders competed in the 20th Southeast Asian Bodybuilding and Physique Sports Championship held in Myanmar as regional athletes gather for one of the sport's premier competitions in the region. The 5-day championship held at the Myanmar Convention Center brought together elite competitors from 8 countries across Southeast Asia. Athletes contested in multiple categories, including various height, weight, and symmetry divisions that highlight both strength and overall physique standards. Organizers say the event aims to promote regional sporting excellence and strengthen competitive bodybuilding in Southeast Asia, while providing a platform for athletes to showcase training discipline, conditioning, and performance on an international stage. The championship is also expected to draw growing spectator interest, reflecting the rising popularity of fitness and physique sports across the region. We move to South Korea, where thousands of participants illuminated the streets of Seoul in a vibrant lantern festival celebrating the Buddhist traditions. Thousands of monks and participants marched through the streets of the South Korean capital carrying colorful lanterns during the annual Lotus Lantern Festival honoring Lord Buddha's birthday. The illuminated procession featured traditional performances, temple groups, and cultural displays, drawing large crowds of residents and tourists who gathered along major city routes to witness the event. The festival is considered one of the most important Buddhist cultural celebrations in South Korea. Participants said the atmosphere reflected a deep sense of peace and community spirit, with lanterns symbolizing hope, wisdom, and enlightenment. Organizers noted that temples across the country took part in celebrations continuing centuries-old traditions linked to Korean Buddhism. The streets of Seoul were transformed into a vibrant sea of light as the Lotus Lantern Festival continued late into the evening, with thousands joining the procession in a shared display of devotion and cultural pride. Officials said the festival also plays an important role in promoting cultural tourism, attracting international visitors, and strengthening awareness of Korea's Buddhist heritage. Many attendees described the event as both spiritual and festive, saying it offered a rare moment of unity in the heart of the capital. From cultural celebrations in Asia, we head to Europe, where music and performance took center stage at the grand finale of the Eurovision Song Contest, owned by Bulgaria's singer, who secured first place after a closely contested vote involving 25 countries.
Bulgarian singer Dara has won the 70th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest, defeating competitors from 24 other countries to claim the title in one of the world's biggest live televised music events. Dara was not initially considered among the front-runners ahead the grand final, but her momentum grew rapidly during Eurovision as audiences and critics responded positively to her energetic stage presence and elaborate choreography. Her upbeat dance anthem, Bangar Chaturanga became a crowd favorite with its catchy rhythm and visually striking performance, helping secure strong support from both juries and viewers across Europe. The Bulgarian singer's victory marks a major achievement for Bulgaria on the Eurovision stage and sparked celebrations among fans following the announcement of the final results. The contest this year featured a mix of ballads, pop anthems, and experimental performances, attracting millions of viewers worldwide. Israel finished in second place after a closely contested vote, while several other favorites fell short despite strong expectations heading into the final. Organizers described the anniversary edition of Eurovision as one of the most competitive and widely watched contests in recent years, highlighting the event's continuing global popularity and cultural influence.
With this, we come to the end of this episode of The World This Week. We shall see you again next week with a new episode, and we hope you enjoyed as much as we did bringing it to you. Also, do follow us on our website www.nepaltelevision.com, our social media handles, as well as our YouTube channel. Till then, take care and bye-bye.
In the high mountains, where the air thins and silence deepens, an ancient discipline endures. More than art, this is meditation in motion, a prayer woven into canvas, finding the divine within. This is Thanka.
Thanka भने चाहिँ त्यो समतल भूमि भने हो के हैन त्यो स्पेस भने हो त्यो रेसेमा पनि तपाईले सेतो गडमा स्पेस देख्यो हैन हो त्यसमा चाहिँ का लेख्ने भने चाहिँ बुद्धको वचन लेख्ने भने हो के त्यो बुद्धको वचन बागल चाहिँ त्यो चाहिँ शुद्ध छ हैन राम्रो छ त्यसले चाहिँ मानव जीवनलाई चाहिँ कल्याण मानव जीवनलाई मात्र नभएर प्राणी जगतलाई नै चाहिँ कल्याण गर्ने चीज हो थाङ्गा त्यही भएर चाहिँ जीवन जिउने सँग चाहिँ रिलेटेड छ भनेर भने हो त्यो चाहिँ पञ्चतत्वको रूपमा चाहिँ त्यो चिनाएर त्यो तत्त्वलाई त्यो ठाउँमा जानुपर्छ भनेरको यो त आशयको रूपमा चाहिँ लगेको हुन्छ
Thanka painting is more than art. It's devotion on canvas, rooted in Buddha philosophy, traditions, and shaped by centuries of Buddhist influence. Each stroke tells a story of enlightenment.
This is not from painter's own mind. This is from the book. So painters, they have to strictly follow the rules. Through meditation, we can understand our true nature. And when we understand our true nature, we understand everybody. And our true nature is compassion. Our true nature is wisdom. And when we practice these things, we find peace, and that peace is permanent.
Thanka painting is not merely creation. It is consecration, rooted in Buddhist philosophy and perfected through centuries. Each brushstroke carries the weight of a mantra, each color a fragment of enlightenment.
खाइबो भन्छ हामीले चाहिँ आर्टिस्टलाई त्यो खाइबाले चाहिँ किन आएर चाहिँ ढोग्यो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ तीन जोडी ढोग्यो त्यो शरण गमन गरे हो के म बुद्धको शरणमा छु भन्ने हो त्यो चाहिँ बुद्ध चित्त उत्पाद गर्ने भन्छ कि चित्त तपाईँको शुद्ध हुनु पर्यो हैन त्यो शुद्ध भएर लेखेको थाङ्गाले चाहिँ अरूलाई पनि राम्रो गर्ने पनि सबै प्राणी हितको लागि चाहिँ यो मैले गरेको लेखेको बुद्ध वचनले चाहिँ उहाँहरूलाई चाहिँ राम्रो होस् भन्ने आशाका साथ चाहिँ छोड्नुपर्छ कि हो यसरी चाहिँ लेखेको हुन्छ थाङ्गा चाहिँ
The Thanka is a visual scripture, a spiritual map to transcendence. Every artist begins not with imagination, but with surrender to discipline, devotion, and compassion for all living beings. To paint is to meditate. To complete is to awaken. In today's studios, the old and the new converge. Tutors like Sushan Subedi introduce curious travelers to ancient grammar of lines and color.
All of the painting you are seeing over here, so these are known as Thanka, which is an Tibetan word which means the painting that is painted on a cotton surface. Okay, so first of all what we do is, we just take a normal cotton like this and we stretch it on a wooden frame very hardly and very tightly. Okay, so while tying it very hard on a normal cotton, what happens is there pores some millions of tiny holes. So if you pour the color can bleed. So we cannot do the painting on a normal cotton. So we have a process, we call it the process of canvas.
While at nearby workshops, artists like Sonam still lose themselves in the ritual of creation.
यो चाहिँ बम्बई ड्याङ कटन जुन यसैबाट चाहिँ हाम्रो ट्रेडिसनल आर्टको चाहिँ थाङ्का फर्स्ट प्रोसेसिङ चाहिँ यहीँबाट हुन्छ सरेस भन्ने गरिन्छ हामीले यो चाहिँ खासमा र याक स्किन भनेर चाहिँ प्रयोग गरिन्छ पहिलेको त्यो हिस्ट्री हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अनि अब यो चाहिँ हाम्रो चाहिँ माध्यम चाहिँ यो ग्लुको काम गर्छ यसले चाहिँ यो र हामीले चाहिँ माटो मिसाएर चाहिँ यसमा पानी लगाएर अब यसको कति मात्रा उ गरेर तताइसकेपछि चाहिँ अनि अब हामीले कत्रो क्यानभस बनाउने कतिवटा बनाउने त्यो हिसाबले हामीले यो सरेस माटो भनिन्छ त्यो मिलाएर मात्रा मिलाएर हामीले प्रोसेसिङमा जानु सकिन्छ हामीले चाहिँ यो क्यानभस बनाउँदाखेरि समय अनुसार मौसम अनुसारले पनि बनाउनु पर्ने हुन्छ घाम लाग्ने बेलामा बनाउन सक्यो भने हामीले छिटो आफ्नो कामहरू छिटो छरिदो बनाउन सकिन्छ र झरी पर्ने बेलामा चाहिँ हामीलाई निकै समय लाग्छ त्यसले गर्दाखेरि यो घाम लाग्ने बेलामा हामीले बनाउन सक्यौं भने छिटो अनि यसलाई आफूलाई चाहिने मात्रामा पटक पटक यता दुई साइडमा चाहिँ क्लिन गर्नु सफा गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ अनि कतिको मात्रा हामीलाई चाहिन्छ त्यो पुगिसकेपछि हामीले त्यसपछि स्केचमा जानुपर्ने हुन्छ यो सुकिसकेपछि चाहिँ एउटा यसरी पनि हामीले चेक गर्न सकिन्छ हामीले कतिको तयारी भयो भएन यो आवाज आउनु पर्ने हुन्छ जस्तै अब ओसिएको छ भने बेग्लै आवाज आउँछ सुकेको छ भने राम्रो आवाज आउँछ यो
Thanka painting begins with the canvas stretched tight, once upon wood, now upon iron frames. The glue that seals it, once drawn from the yak, now sourced from the maple or synthesized in a lab. Yet in the scent of drying paste, the artist still reads the readiness of the soul of the painting.
So after the sketching is done, second thing we do is the coloring. So while coloring, we have different levels of artists in our school. Like from the beginner level, we have intermediate and the master level of artists. So if you go with the beginner intermediate, they use the acrylic colors. But if you go with the master level of artists, so they use the stone colors like this. Okay, so why they use the stone color is stone being a natural color. So while we apply this sort of color in the art, it remains for the longer period of time because natural thing, it doesn't have expiry date. Yeah, so the meaning and the philosophy of an art, the art itself, it is preserved for the longer period of time. So that's why they use the stone. And for the finishing of an art, so we use 24 karat real gold on the painting. Okay, so why we use the gold is not to make the painting very expensive, but if you see in Hinduism, in Buddhism, gold, it is signified as in purity. So to purify the meaning and the philosophy behind the art, so we use 24 karat real gold.
Every line follows a rule, every proportion holds meaning. The face of the deity isn't imagined, it slowly reveals itself, guided by sacred patterns that keep harmony between the world outside and the spirit within. The colors come from the earth, crushed stones and minerals mixed with glue, made to last for generations. Lapis brings purity, malachite speaks of compassion, and cinnabar carries wisdom. These are just colors, they are prayers in pigment.
प्राचीन कालमा चाहिँ यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ पाँचवटा कलर लेख्ने हो। पाँच कलर जस्तो अग्नि तत्त्व, वायु तत्त्व, माटो तत्त्व, हावा तत्त्व, पाँच तत्त्वले बनाएको हो। त्यो पाँच तत्त्वले किन बनाएको भने त्यो पाँच तत्त्वबाट हाम्रो शरीर बनाएको छ नि। यो थाङ्गा भनेको चाहिँ वास्तवमा के हो भने जे जति थाङ्गामा छ त्यो हामीसँगै छ, जे हामीसँग चाहिँ थाङ्गामै छ। त्यसकारण त्यो बेला चाहिँ त्यो नेचुरल, हामीले पनि नेचुरली बनाएको हो नि त, प्रकृतिले बनाएको नि, थाङ्गा पनि प्रकृति नै हो। त्यसमा अलिक अहिले चाहिँ कलर के छ भने पाँचवटा कलरमा हामीले मिसाउँदाखेरि अर्को कलर बन्छ। त्यो पाँचवटा कलर मात्रै पुग्दैन। त्यो बेला त्यो रियालिटी थाङ्गाबाट नजिक बसेर साधना गर्दा हामीलाई त्यो भाइब्रेसन आउँछ, पोजिटिभ कुरा आउँछ। यो त खालि बुद्ध जुन बुद्धले टिकाको टिचिङ गर्नुभएको नेचुरल फेनोमेना छ नि, नेचर माइन्ड छ नि, त्योसँग रिलेटेड छ यो।
Home Bahadur Tamang, a gifted Thanga artist from the spiritual heart of Buddha, has turned his craft into a global bridge between tradition and business.
थाङ्गा चाहिँ मैले 1970 सिक्न सुरुवात गरेको। मेरो टिचर चाहिँ म भन्दा अघिल्लो मेरो दाइ हो, साइला दाइ। मेरो चाहिँ बाउपादेखि नै कलाकार हुनुहुन्थ्यो। पाटन, भक्तपुर, छामेल, दरबार स्क्वायरमा यसै पसल बेच्ने काम हुन्थ्यो। अनि त्यो बेच्दा मैले यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ विदेशीले किन्दो रहेछ, आफैले विदेशसँग बेच्नुपर्छ भन्ने अलिकति मनमा मलाई अलिकति सोच आयो। त्यसपछि मैले 2050 सालमा यहाँ सुरु गरेँ, आजभन्दा 32 वर्ष अगाडि।
What began as a young artist's journey through the streets of Kathmandu has blossomed into a thriving enterprise where sacred art meets business and tourism. With every brushstroke, home brings Nepal's rich spiritual heritage to the world, transforming Thanga painting into a symbol of cultural fusion.
त्यो बेला चाहिँ पसल कोही पनि यहाँ थिएन, किनभने त्यो मार्केटले चाहिँ कहाँ मार्केट हुन्छ भन्ने खोज्दो रहेछ। त्यो खोज्ने क्रममा म यहाँ आइपुग्यो। विदेशीहरू पनि यहाँ त्यति अहिले जस्तो बस्दैन, 5 मिनट 10 मिनटमा घुमेर जानुहुन्थ्यो। त्यतिखेर खाने रेस्टुरेन्ट पनि एकजना मात्रै थियो, एउटा मात्रै थियो। अहिले चाहिँ होस् त्यो बेला र अहिलेमा धेरै आकाश जमिनको फरक भएको छ।
His story is one of passion, innovation, and a deep commitment to preserving tradition while embracing the future.
विशेष गरी यो बौद्ध स्तूपसँग रिलेटेड छ। यो बुद्धको शिक्षासँग रिलेटेड यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ संसारको मानिसहरू यो स्तूपलाई घुम्ने क्रममा यो प्रार्थना गर्ने मेन आउने ठाउँ चाहिँ यो रहेछ। त्यसो भएको हुनाले यो चाहिँ विशेष गरी ओल्ड हेरिटेज साइटमा चाहिँ त्यो पनि के हो बुद्धिस्टको भएको हुनाले चाहिँ नेपालभरि कुनै थाङ्का बिक्ने ठाउँ चाहिँ अति महत्त्वपूर्ण चाहिँ यो नै हो वास्तवमा। किनभने रियालिटी छ यो बुद्धसँग.
From the hills of Ramechhap to the heart of Bodh, Khom Bahadur Damang has a glorious story to tell. A story of will, determination, struggle and success.
म आफै पनि रामेछाप दुर्गम जिल्लामा जन्मेको चाहिँ नि रोजगार छैन, त्यहाँ स्कुल छैन, कलेज छैन, हस्पिटल छैन, रोजगार छैन. त्यसपछि म पनि रोजगारकै क्रममा यहाँ आएर मैले सुरुवात गर्यो. अहिले चाहिँ म लगभग 49 वर्ष भयो यही पेसा गरेर दाल भात खाएको. अब नयाँ पुस्तालाई पनि मैले हस्तान्तरण गर्नुपर्छ है भन्ने मेरो एउटा उद्देश्यले चाहिँ अहिले मैले नयाँ पुस्तालाई चाहिँ गाउँबाट आउनुहुन्छ, स्कुल सकेर अनि बिहान चाहिँ कलेज जानुहुन्छ, दिउँसो काम छैन. त्यस कारणले मैले 3 महिना फ्री ट्रेनिङ दिने गरेको छ. उहाँको स्किल अन्त टेस्ट गरेर हामीले यहीँ तलब दिएर जस्तो बिहान कलेज पनि भ्यायो उसको कति हो त्यसो त्यहाँबाट एक्स्ट्रा टाइम चाहिँ 5 घण्टा 6 घण्टा 7 घण्टा पनि यहाँ जीवन चलाउने चाहिँ काम भइरहेको छ अहिले.
For 49 years, he painted, taught and empowered young artisans. Today, his school preserves tradition and creates futures.
हामीले यहाँ सुरुमा इन्टरभ्यू लिन्छु. त्यसपछि 1 हप्ता चाहिँ नि सानो क्यानभासमा हात ट्रेनिङ दिन्छु. त्यसको शरीरको बडीहरू अलिकति ट्रेनिङ दिन्छु. अनि 1 हप्तापछि ओके भनेर ओके या यस भने कोही मानिस नसक्ने चाहिँ नि आधा घण्टामा 1 घण्टामा उठेर गइहाल्छ. म सक्दैन, ढाड दुख्यो, किन उसको मन धेरै भएर गयो, त्यो सक्दैन, ऊ आउँदैन, एक दिन पनि आउँदैन. मात्रै आँखा चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो. हामीले अपाङ्गलाई पनि सिकाएको छ, जस्तो बाहिर कान नसुन्ने पनि सिकाएको छ, आँखा चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो. त्यस्तै हो.
As interest in Buddhism grows worldwide, so does the appreciation for our sacred art. Foreigners now come not just to admire but to learn, studying our architecture techniques and meditative Thanka traditions, giving new life to what was once known only within our borders.
बुद्धिज्म नेपाल हो. नेपालमा जति छन् विश्वसम्पादकमा सूचीमा भएको मठ मन्दिर गुम्बद छ. यसैबाट उहाँले पनि सिकेको वास्तवमा. यो जुन बौद्ध स्तूपरा भनौँ लुम्बिनी त्यो जस्तो त उहाँहरूले बनाउन सक्दैन. तर यसको चाहिँ एकदम महत्त्वपूर्ण के छ भगवान या चाहिँ दोस्रो तेस्रो बुद्धको रिलेटिभ यहाँ छ. जति चाहिँ अहिले संसारमा यो बुद्धिज्म फैलिँदै जान्छ, यो महायान बुद्धिज्म त्यत्तिकै ठाङ्गको भ्यालु चाहिँ बढ्दैछ अहिले. जस्तो मेरै कुराहरू मैले 40-45 वर्ष यति ठाङ्गको महत्त्व थिएन, किनभने वर्ल्ड वाइडमा बुद्धिज्ममा थिएन, विदेशीहरूले जानेकै थिएन. उनीहरूले त्यो सुरु आउँदाखेरि सानो एउटा नेपाल आउँदाखेरि सुपर नेट किन नलैजाऊ भन्ने मान्दै लाइन थियो. अहिले चाहिँ उहाँहरू चाहिँ जस्तो अमेरिका, युरोप, तपाईँको यो सिङ्गापुर, ताइवान, मलेसिया विभिन्न देशमा चाहिँ अहिले बुद्धिस्ट प्र्याक्टिसनर धेरै उहाँहरू चाहिँ गर्नुहुन्छ. त्यसको लागि चाहिँ एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण छ. त्यस कारणले भविष्यमा यो थाङ्गा चाहिँ छ, यसको मार्केट छ.
As an artist, entrepreneur and a master, he feels fulfilled, creating beauty, guiding others and living with purpose.
मैले संसार जीवन जगतलाई थाहा पायो. अहिले हामी सांसारिक जीवन छ, सांसारिक जीवनमा कसरी जिउने र अर्कोलाई पनि कसरी जिउन दिने कला थाहा पायो. त्यसपछि अब जुन देशमा जन्मे पनि जुन कुलमा जन्मे पनि 100% निश्चित के हो भने मृत्यु छ. त्यो त निश्चित हो नि. एउटै निश्चित छैन, कहिले पनि निश्चित छैन. तर त्यो मर्नेमा म कसरी मर्ने भन्ने कला पनि थाहा पाएँ मैले. मलाई त धेरै परिवर्तन भएको छ. मैले परिवर्तन भयो भने के हुन्छ, मैले ठुलो पत्यारो चढ्यो, ठुलो गाडी त्यस्तो होइन, तर मलाई खुसी छ. सादा दाल भात खान पाएछ, मैले परिवार पाल्नु पाएछ. यही थाङ्गाले म जापान घुम्यो, युरोप गयो, चाइना घुम्यो, बुद्धिस्ट कन्ट्री सबै घुमेको छ. सबै ठाउँमा मैले घुम्नलाई मलाई पैसाको आपत पनि परेन. थाङ्गा सँगसँगै लाँदै ब्रिफिङ गर्दै बेच्दै दर्शन बेचेको हो. त्यस कारण मलाई त एकदम खुसी छु म त पनि.
Then comes the awakening, the eyes. Until that moment, the Thangka is silent. When the artist paints the peoples, the deity is invited to reside within. The canvas breathes, the prayer begins. From quiet Himalayan ateliers to the galleries in Tokyo, Berlin, and New York, Thangkas now travel far beyond the monasteries. They adorn homes, museums, and collectors' walls, a global symbol of Nepal's artistic devotion.
Mostly, Thangka word itself is a Tibetan word, so this tradition belongs to Tibetan people. This tradition belongs to Tamang. This tradition belongs to Newar community. Although they have different expression of color, technique, the detail, but this tradition, this culture belongs to these three community, and this is kind of passed on tradition. They learn this skill from their forefather to the new generation. This is how this tradition has been continuing and preserving. So it is beneficial for them to live their life, and it is beneficial for the country because this is a culture, and culture and tradition is the treasure of each country.
The trade sustains thousands. From the hum of Bodha's alleys to export crates bound for distant lands, Thangka has become a vital thread in Nepal's creative economy. Yet, as markets grow, so does the tension between faith and fame, between meditation and merchandise.
कला चाहिँ दुवै राम्रै हो हैन आफ्नो आफ्नै फिलोसफी भन्ने हो यसले चाहिँ तपाईको मन भित्रको डेप्थमा जाने सिकाउने हो यसमा चाहिँ यो चाहिँ मिहिन काम हुन्छ कठिन पनि हुन्छ के किनभने यसमा चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ अघिको जस्तो धेरै चीजहरु चाहिँ लिनुपर्छ अनुशासन लिनु पर्यो हैन यसको विधि विधानमा बसेर गर्नुपर्छ यसमा चाहिँ अब त्यो चाहिँ तपाईको मनमा जुन फिलिङ्स आउँछ त्यो लेखिहाल्ने हो के त्यो गर्दाखेरि त्यसले पनि ओलमा चलिरहेछ यसले चाहिँ नेपालले किन अब त्यसलाई चाहिँ कम्पिटिसन गर्न सक्छ भने चाहिँ यो चीज चाहिँ अरूले गर्न सक्दैन किनभने त्यसमा मेडिटेसन ध्यान जस्तै गर्नुपर्छ के सरकारी स्कुलबाट चाहिँ स्कुलिङ देखि नै गर्नुपर्छ यसको पाठ्यक्रमहरु बनाउनु पर्छ हैन एउटा त्यो गरिसकेपछि यसको प्रमोट हुन्छ हैन हामीलाई चाहिने त त्यो प्रवर्धन हो नि तर ब्याङ्किङहरुले पनि के गर्नु पर्यो भने यसलाई चाहिँ बिना दिदोमा पनि के रे ऋण दिने वातावरण हैन कलाकारको के छुटाएर के अनि तपाईको हामीले ट्याक्स तिर्नु पर्छ ट्याक्स तिर्दाखेरि पनि कुनै एउटा चीज चाहिँ कलाकारलाई कुन ओदामा राखेर त्यसको एउटा ब्यालेन्स एउटा गरेर सरकारले गरिदियो भने यसको जन अझ फ्रस्टिन्छ के फ्रस्टिएपछि त यो नेपालकै लागि चाहिँ यसले चाहिँ पर्यटनलाई पनि विकास हुने अनि त्यो स्कुल कलेजमा भयो भने पुस्तक हस्तान्तरण चाहिँ एकदम दिगो हुन्छ के
All the Thangka has same meaning of peace. So foreigner, they admire philosophy. Practitioner also, they choose deities mostly to practice, to visualize, and they imagine the quality of deities with themselves. And some least person, they want it as a souvenir to decorate for the positive vibe. Some they buy it for the gift for their loved one. Philosophy reminds us about the beautiful quality, and that quality gives us peace, and that peace is everyone searching for. So Thangka painting is very, very important for everyone because it is relevant with our life. If it is relevant with our life, that is truth.
But beyond commerce and canvas, a Thangka is still a mirror, reflecting a way of life where art and spirit breathe as one. Every brush that moves today carries the echo of generations, an unbroken whisper from monastery walls to the modern world. As the sun sets over the Himalayas, somewhere an artist bows before a finished thangka. His work is now complete, his prayer released. For in every stroke lies a journey from pigment to prayer, from devotion to eternity. This is not just Nepal's art, it is Nepal's soul, painted into time.
A majestic destination blessed by cultural, religious, historic and natural diversities. Nepal is the country of Mount Everest and the birthplace of Lord Gautama Buddha. Karnali is synonymous to Nepal. One can experience the diversity of Nepal by visiting Karnali province. It is a must-go destination for those who want to experience the real Nepal. Karnali, that represents Nepal's age-old civilization, is in itself mesmerizing. The province has immense tourism potential with its unique natural, religious, cultural, archaeological, and historic diversity. The famous tourist destinations in the province have played an important role in representing Nepal at the international level. Tourism can be the base for prosperity of Karnali region based on its immense prospects. Lakes, water bodies and famous religious sites are the major attractions for tourists in this province. Rara Lake, Sefoksundu Lake, Bulbule Lake, Chayanath, Dai Lake, Sinja Valley, Humla. This is Rara. Rara is the largest lake in Nepal. The lake is situated at Chayanath Rural Municipality of Mugu District in the Rara National Park. The unique lake is not just known for the different species of rare fishes and the musk ducks, but also for the changing color as per the climatic condition. Many foreign tourists come here to witness the camouflage of this majestic lake. A virgin destination a few years back. Now, more than 50,000 tourists flock the Rara Lake every year, and the number is constantly on the rise. Land and air are the two means to reach Rara Lake. You can reach Rara in a day from Kathmandu by air. From Trivandrum International Airport, Kathmandu to Nepalganj, and another flight from Nepalganj to Talcher Airport in Mugu is the easiest option. However, from Talcher, it is another 3 hours uphill walk to reach the breathtaking Rara Lake. If you choose land travel, it might take up to 3 days. A day's travel from Kathmandu to Surkhet, an overnight stay. Manma, the district headquarters of Kalikot, from Surkhet, an overnight stay, and on the 3rd day you can reach the Rara Lake. You need not walk if you choose this route for Rara Lake. Humla is a very remote Himalayan district of Nepal bordering Mugu. It has great touristic importance. Many pilgrims who want to go to the mythical Kailas mountain via Mansarovar take the journey via Humla district. Tourists, mainly Indian pilgrims, travel to Mansarovar, one of the largest pure water bodies at the highest altitude in the world, for religious purposes. This is the shortest and the most convenient route for the pilgrims. Most of the pilgrims traveling to Mansarovar choose air trip up to Simikot of Humla from Nepalganj. From Simikot, helicopter trip up to Hilsa, from where they enter Chinese autonomous region of Tibet. One day's drive from entering Tibet, the pilgrims reach Mansarovar. The Kimi Valley of Humla is another new tourist destination in the district. ancient idols of archaeological importance, and the monasteries have given it a new name, the Valley of Monasteries. These priceless statues, sculptures, and artifacts are the major attractions in the valley. Majority of the tourists visiting Karnali are the pilgrims from India. Culturally, the people of the Karnali region believe in multi-deity worship, but majority pay homage to their ancestral deity, the master god. The famous ritual of worshipping 12 master deities has become a popular subject for researchers and tourists alike. Karnali is a majestic land, naturally as well as culturally. It has religious and cultural heritages in abundance. It offers attractions for tourists of varying interests. Somewhat deprived in education, health, and employment. Karnali's tourism potential, due to its unique and diverse nature, geography, religion, culture, history, and archaeology, is unexplored. Many potential tourist destinations have yet to be explored in this region. So far, 101 destinations in the region have been branded as of touristic importance. Of the 101, 13 are under federal government, 9 under province government, and 79 under local levels. Karnali might lack top-class infrastructures including roadways, hotels, or communications, but many destinations attract adventure tourists. Likewise, medicinal herbs like Yarsagumba, Kali Marsi paddy, millet and barley fields attract tourists when in full bloom. Some of the best organic dishes on offer you might find Kali Marsi paddy, honey, broad beans, dry apple, marfa, barley, sip wool products as the gifts of Karnali. Whitewater rafting in the 5th best river in the world, Karnali, and very tall and majestic Kanjirova, Patarasi and Sisne mountains open for expedition challenge mountaineers and explorers alike.
Nationwide safety drive launched as highways face flood, landslide threats along Kathmandu connectors. Nepal tea exports to India resume after diplomatic breakthrough. Foreign Ministry confirms removal of trade obstacles. Nepal halts registration of new public transport vehicles amid rising traffic congestion, pollution and fuel pressure. Nearly 300 climbers reached top in a single day as season gains momentum. Nepal eyes billion-rupee revenue boost. NATO welcomes US troop deployment to Poland, says security cooperation remains central. And Nepal crushed USA by 122 runs to end League 2 series on high note, boost standings with strong all-round show. Hello there, I'm Diksha Wasti. You're watching NTV World News Hour. We are coming to you live from Kathmandu at 2200 hours Nepal time. Now the news in details. Nepal has launched a nationwide monsoon disaster preparedness campaign to reduce risk of floods, landslides and traffic disruptions during the rainy season, particularly along major highways connecting Kathmandu with other parts of the country. The Road and Vehicle Targeted Monsoon Disaster Reduction Campaign 2083 was inaugurated at New Bus Park in Gongabu by Additional Inspector General of Police Ishwar Karki, with authorities urging travellers to follow weather updates and drive cautiously. Officials say stricter traffic management and expanded online ticketing systems will be introduced, while weather forecasts from the Meteorological Division are being closely monitored to prevent accidents. Meanwhile, heightened concern has been reported in Tading as ongoing construction along the Prithvi Highway and Tribhuvan Highway raises the risk of landslides and road blockages in monsoon. Authorities say special security and disaster response teams will be deployed along high-risk routes with emergency food, water and shelter arrangements in place for stranded passengers, as nearly 17,000 vehicles use the highways daily and more than 70 vulnerable points remain under close watch. Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says diplomatic efforts have helped remove recent obstacles affecting Nepali tea exports to neighboring India, following concerns over a directive issued by the Indian Tea Board. Speaking at a regular press briefing in Kathmandu, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lok Bahadur Paudel Chhetri said coordination between Nepal's embassy in New Delhi and Indian authorities led to amendments in the directive, making the export process easier for Nepali tea producers and traders. The ministry also announced that the third meeting of the Nepal-China Project Implementation Mechanism will be held in Kathmandu in June, with Nepal's Foreign Secretary and the Chinese ambassador to Nepal expected to co-chair the talks, while separate bilateral consultation meetings with Norway and Switzerland are also being planned. Meanwhile,
भारतीय टी बोर्डले 10 फेब्रुअरी 2026 का दिन जारी गरेको निर्देशिका अनुरूप नेपालबाट भारतले नेपाली चियाको निकासी प्रभावित भएको थियो। यसको जवाबदारीका निम्ति मन्त्रालय र नेशनल स्टेट दूतावासले भारतीय पक्षसँग गरेको छलफल, समन्वय र पहलबाट भारतीय टी बोर्डबाट जारी गरेको उल्लेखित निर्देशिकालाई 19 मे 2026 मा संशोधन गरी विद्यमान चिया निकासी समस्या हललाई सहज हुने भएको छ।
Meanwhile, the government says rescue operations are continuing for Nepalis trapped in illegal online scamming centers operating along border regions of Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos and Thailand, with 687 people rescued and brought back to Nepal so far, including 71 in the past 2 weeks alone. Nepal has temporarily suspended the registration of new public transport vehicles nationwide, citing rising traffic congestion, air pollution and fuel price pressures. The Department of Transport Management has directed authorities not to register buses, minibuses, microbuses, taxis, vans, jeeps and other public service vehicles, including electric units, until further notice. Officials say the decision is aimed at bringing scientific management to the transport sector, which has been strained by unmanaged vehicle growth and infrastructure limits. The government has not set a timeline for lifting the suspension, stating it will depend on future assessments of traffic and environmental conditions. We will bring more on this in our segment issue of the day later in the bulletin. Now, more than 270 climbers reached the summit of Mount Everest on Wednesday. According to the Department of Tourism, Nepal's spring climbing season gained momentum following the official opening of the route earlier this month. A total of 494 climbers from 55 countries have received permits this season, with officials reporting that more than 1.24 billion rupees has been collected in mountaineering fees, including over 1 billion rupees from Everest alone. Meanwhile, record-holding climber Kamirita Sherpa, who completed his 32nd ascent this week, said the summit felt a bit crowded and urged authorities to regulate the number of climbers and prioritize quality expeditions. We will bring more on this in our segment Cover Story later in the bulletin. Now, internationally, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has welcomed U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement that 5,000 American troops would be deployed to Poland, reversing an earlier decision to cancel the planned deployment. Speaking ahead of a meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Sweden, Rutte said the alliance was moving toward a stronger Europe and a stronger NATO that would gradually become less dependent on the United States. In a social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump that the deployment decision was influenced by his relationship with Polish President Karol Nawrocki, a nationalist ally, amid tensions over European support for the U.S. during the Iran conflict. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio acknowledged that Trump's disappointment with some NATO allies over their response to the Iran war would need to be addressed during talks with alliance partners in Sweden, but also reassured that the troop adjustments were not punitive in nature.
You saw the president's announcement last night with regards to Poland and deployment. That said, obviously the United States continues to have global commitments that it needs to meet in terms of our force deployment, and that constantly requires us to re-examine where we put troops. This is not a punitive thing. It's just something that's ongoing, and it was pre-existing, all these recent reports and tensions and so forth. So that's a process that will continue, that I think
Now, Nepal national cricket team ended its ICC Cricket World Cup League 2 Tri-Series campaign on a winning note after defeating the top-ranked United States national cricket team by 122 runs at the Tribhuvan University International Cricket Ground. Nepal posted a strong total of 315 for 8, powered by key contributions from Ishan Pandey, Dipendra Singh Airi, Rohit Paudel and Asif Sheikh. In response, the United States were bowled out under pressure as Sandeep Lamichhane and other bowlers led a dominant attack, securing Nepal's second win over the USA in the series and lifting them to 5th place in the League 2 standings. Nepal's sudden halt on registering new public transport vehicles has stirred debate across the nation. From buses to taxis, the freeze aims to tackle congestion, pollution and rising fuel costs. But how will this decision reshape daily travel and the transport industry? We will take a closer look to it after this short break. Welcome back. You're watching NTV World News Hour. I'm Diksha Awasthi. Now on to the issue of the day. Nepal has temporarily halted the registration of new public transport vehicles, a move expected to impact the transport sector across the country. The Department of Transport Management has instructed that buses, minibuses, microbuses, taxis and other public transport vehicles must not be newly registered, citing rising traffic congestion, air pollution and fuel price pressures. A report.
Nepal's government has temporarily suspended the registration of new public transport vehicles nationwide, citing rising traffic congestion, air pollution and fuel price pressures. The Department of Transport Management has directed provincial and local authorities to stop registering buses, minibuses, microbuses, taxis, vans, jeeps and other public vehicles, including electric units. Officials say unmanaged growth in public transport has worsened traffic jams, disrupted daily travels, and increased air pollution, while rising fuel costs have added further pressure on the sector. A department official said the measure is intended to bring scientific management to the public transport system, which has struggled to balance vehicle growth with infrastructure capacity.
अब हामीलाई के भयो भन्दाखेरि मुख्य चाहिँ अब समस्या काठमाडौँबाट पनि सिर्जना भयो र बाहिर पनि छ आफ्ना किसिमका समस्याहरू छन् जस्तै काठमाडौँमा वायु प्रदूषणको ठूलो समस्या भयो त्यस्तै गरेर अब सवारीको चाप अहिले धेरै भएर चाहिँ ट्राफिक जामका समस्याहरू हामीले भोगिरहेका छौं हैन त्यसकारण सडकको क्षमता भन्दाखेरि बढी चाहिँ सवारीहरू हुँदाखेरि पनि हामीले चाहिँ विभिन्न समस्याहरू आएका छन् त्यस्तै अब रुट व्यवस्थापन कुनै रुटमा धेरै गाडीहरू भएर चाहिँ अत्याधिक भिड हुने कुनै रुटमा चाहिँ गाडी नपाइने समस्याहरू छन् त्यस्तै अब पुरानो गाडीहरू चलिरहेका छन् त्यो पुरानो गाडीहरूलाई कसरी व्यवस्थापन गर्ने भन्ने आफैमा अर्को इस्यु छ हैन अनि अब फेरि अर्को अब नयाँ इस्यु अहिले आयो चाहिँ यो जुन डिजल र पेट्रोलको चाहिँ आकाशिलो मूल्य हो त्यसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ खाली गाडी गुड्दाखेरि चाहिँ एक किसिमको त्यो चाहिँ राष्ट्रलाई घाटा हुने हो यी आदि कारणले गर्दाखेरि हामीले चाहिँ यो अहिले
The government says the decision is grounded in provisions under the Vehicle and Transport Management Act 2049, which allows authorities to restrict vehicle registration in the interest of public welfare, road conditions, traffic management, and environmental protection. The move has drawn mixed reactions from stakeholders. The Nepal Transport Entrepreneurs Federation said it had not yet received formal communication regarding the decision.
कुन क्षेत्रमा सार्वजनिक सवारी साधन बढी भएन हैन कुन रुटमा सवारी साधनको संख्या बढी भएको छ ती रुटको अध्ययन र अनुगमन गरेर मात्रै रुट परमिट रोका गर्न पर्ने हो र यसको पछाडी मैले यहाँलाई यति नै भनौं कि हामीसँग छलफल बिना नै
On the other side, the Nepal Automobile Dealers Association NADA said that while environmental protection and transport management are necessary, policy implementation should be carried out in coordination with all stakeholders, including the private sector.
सवारी साधन भित्रिसकेको छन् हैन भित्रिसकेका सवारी चाहिँ अब दर्ता कसरी हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा र यत्रो सवारी साधन चलिरहेको अवस्थामा एउटा यो समस्या छ भने सरकारले पनि मलाई लाग्छ यो केही न केही सोचेर यसलाई राम्रो गर्नको लागि नै कसरी चाहिँ यसलाई मिलाएर लान सकिन्छ भन्ने केही सोचले गर्नुभयो होला त्यही भएर अहिले सम्म चाहिँ वास्तवमा भन्ने हो यो के हो भन्ने कुरामा हामी पनि अन्यल छौं हैन समग्र रूपमा भइरहेको चीजलाई पनि व्यवस्थापन मिलाएर अहिलेको सवारी साधन आइसकेको सवारी साधनमा दर्ता प्रक्रिया गरिदिनु भयो भने राम्रो हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई.
According to official data, around 6 million vehicles are currently registered in Nepal. Of these, approximately 1.5 million are not in active operation, while about 4.5 million vehicles are regularly on the roads. Motorcycles account for a rapidly growing share of total vehicle numbers in recent years. The government has not set a timeline for lifting the suspension, stating that it will depend on future assessments of traffic and pollution.
In this context, we asked the public, including transportation professionals, what they think about the suspension of registration of public vehicles. Let's have a look at what they say in today's Public Concern.
नयाँ दर्ता गरेर प्रदूषण कम हुने होइन तर रोजीरोटी चाहिँ खोजिन्छ त्यो ठीक होइन जो मजदुरले नयाँ चल्न पर्नेहरूले नयाँ किन्न पर्छ पुरानो त फाल्ने नयाँ पो त भन्ने 20 वर्ष अगाडिका फाल्नु पर्थ्यो बरु यो त ठीक गरेन
पोल्युसन यति धेरै छ अनि ट्राफिकले गर्दा हामी एउटा जस्ट 10 मिनेटको बाटो पनि हामीलाई 20-30 मिनेट लाग्छ के त्यही भएर यो चाहिँ एकदम ठीक छ
अब अहिलेको जति पनि धुवा प्रदूषण
बाटोमा जाम र भएको कारणले अहिले जति पनि नयाँ आउने गाडीहरूलाई रोक लगाएको बन्द लगाएको राम्रो हो।
अहिले ट्राफिकहरू चाहिँ एकदमै धेरै छ। हामीलाई इन्स्टिट्युटहरू पुग्न पनि एकदमै गाह्रो भयो। 10 मिनटमा पुग्ने कुरामा हामी 15 मिनट्स त्यस्तो लेट हुन्छौँ अनि त्यही भएर यो चाहिँ एकदमै व्यवस्थित गरेर यो एकदम ठिक छ।
त्यो ठिकै हो। गाडी छाप्नलाई बाटै सानो छ होइन, भएकै गाडीले रोक्ने सबै छैन कहीँ पनि होइन। अब त्यो स्थितिले गर्दा हामीलाई नै चलाउनु त गाह्रो भइरहेछ। प्राइभेटहरूले उस्तै बिस्तारो हिँड्छन् होइन, सबै बाटोमा बाधा भइरहेको हुन्छ।
पुरानो गाडी छ, सरकारले चाहिँ नयाँ इन्जिन ल्याउन रोक गरेर यही गाडीलाई चाहिँ मेन्टेन्स गरेर चलाउँदा राम्रो हुन्छ। व्यवस्थित गर्नु पर्यो, अब अलिकति बाटो बढाउनु पर्यो यताउता होइन। अब रोकेर त्यो बजार व्यवस्था नै थाहा बन्द गऱ्यो भने त कसरी चल्ला त।
That wraps up our issue of the day. On to the next segment now. Mount Everest spring season is in full swing, but as Nepal celebrates record-breaking ascent and billion-rupee revenues, legendary mountaineer Kami Rita Sherpa warns a growing overcrowding at the top of the world. We will look more into it after this short breather. Welcome back. You're with NTV World News Hour. Now the cover story. More than 270 climbers successfully reached the summit of Mount Everest on Wednesday as Nepal's spring climbing season gains momentum following the official opening of the route earlier this month. According to Nepal's Department of Tourism, 2074 domestic and foreign climbers submitted the world's highest peak in a single day, while a total of 494 climbers from 55 countries have received permits to attempt Everest this season. Officials say the largest number of permits this year were issued to climbers from China and the United States, with each climber typically accompanied by a Sherpa guide, bringing the estimated total number of Everest climbers this season to nearly 1,000. The Department of Tourism also reported strong revenue earnings from mountaineering activities, collecting more than 1.24 billion Nepali rupees in fees for expeditions on 30 mountains above 6,000 meters. Authorities say over 1 billion rupees of the total came from Everest permits alone, underlining the continued economic importance of Himalayan tourism and high-altitude expedition to Nepal's economy. Similarly, Kami Rita Sherpa, a 56-year-old Nepali climber, globally known as the Everest Man, who this week reached the peak of the world's highest mountain for a record 32nd time this week, rekindled concerns over crowding on the summit. Speaking to the media, Sherpa said the expedition this time felt a bit crowded and hopes the government limits the number of climbers and only lets in climbers of quality.
रेकर्ड राख्नको लागि होइन, नेपालको लागि नेपाललाई चिनाउनु र नेपाललाई चाहिँ विदेशीहरूलाई चाहिँ कसरी प्रमोट गर्नुपर्छ, टुरिज्मलाई कसरी प्रमोट गर्नुपर्छ भनेर चाहिँ मैले चाहिँ लगातार निर्णय गर्ने हो आयो। किनभने बोर्डको दाजुमा धेरै क्लान्सहरू परेको थियो र यसलाई चाहिँ अलिकति भयो भने चाहिँ सरकारले चाहिँ अब यसलाई चाहिँ अलिकति नियन्त्रण गर्नुपर्ने नियन्त्रण गर्नुपर्छ।
That concludes our cover story of the day. Now the remaining. Minister for Communications Dr. Bikram Timilsina says the government is focused on expanding quality internet and telephone services across Nepal, especially in remote areas, as part of efforts to reduce the digital divide. Minister Timilsina said about 16.78 billion rupees from the Rural Telecommunications Fund will be mobilized for digital infrastructure, including data centers and digital parks. Lawmakers, however, raised concerns over weak implementation and limited results in digital expansion and public service delivery. The government says it aims to transform Nepal into a technology hub through improved connectivity and e-governance.
अब फेरि अर्को 5 मेगाहर्ज फ्रिक्वेन्सी चाहिँ हामी त्यसको लागि पनि सहजीकरण गर्दै छौं नेपाल टेलिकमले पाउनेछ सँगसँगै एकदमै ठूलो संख्यामा चाहिँ देशभरि टावरको समस्या नहोस् भन्ने किसिमले चाहिँ हामीले टावरहरू खरिद गरेर इनोडपी को खरिद गरेर समस्या समाधान गर्नको लागि परेका छौं.
The Kaski District Court has amended the case against Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP President Rabi Lamithane, removing charges related to organized crime and money laundering while keeping the cooperative fraud case intact. The court made the decision following a petition from the District Government Attorney's Office acting on the Attorney General's recommendation to drop the serious financial crime charges. The court said the amendment would simplify legal proceedings and facilitate recovery processes in the cooperative fraud case. The decision also applies to co-defendants GB Rai and Chabilal Joshi. Finance Minister Dr. Sonim Wagle says Nepal's electricity production, tourism arrivals and foreign exchange reserves have increased, with banks currently holding excess liquidity. Minister Wagle told a parliamentary committee that forest-based exports have reached 20 billion rupees and carbon credit revenue has started entering national funds. The government also reported 390 new development projects aimed at strengthening infrastructure and economic growth. Officials say Nepal is moving toward greater self-reliance through hydropower expansion, industrial production and digital governance. Infrastructure Development Minister Sunil Lamsal has assured construction entrepreneurs that the government is working to resolve payment delays, rising costs and project deadline issues affecting the sector. Contractors told a parliamentary committee they are facing financial stress due to unpaid bills and inflation-driven cost increases. The minister said legal and policy reforms are being prepared, but warned that delays and poor quality work will not be tolerated. Lawmakers urged timely payments and reforms to ensure smooth execution and development projects. A severe heat wave sweeping across Nepal's western Tarai region has disrupted daily life for the past week, with temperatures in Tikapur and other parts of Kailali climbing above 40 degrees Celsius. Authorities say 7 armed police force trainees undergoing basic training at the Armed Police Force Nepal Revenue and Industrial Training School in Tikapur fainted during a running exercise, with some airlifted to Kathmandu for further treatment while others are receiving care at Tikapur Hospital. Residents say the intense heat and hot afternoon winds have reduced movement in markets and public areas, while parents are urging schools to operate only morning classes as children, senior citizens and chronically ill people face growing health risks. Doctors at Sethi Provincial Hospital say the number of heat-related patients is increasing and have advised people to avoid ongoing outdoors during the hottest hours of the day. Drink plenty of water and remain indoors as much as possible, as forecasters warn the heat wave could continue to several more days. Nepal Rashtra Bank is set to collect 100 billion Nepali rupees in deposits from banks and financial institutions for a period of 61 days as part of efforts to manage excess liquidity in the country's banking system. The central bank said these deposits will be collected through a bidding process, with eligible institutions allowed to participate in amounts ranging from a minimum of 100 million rupees up to 50 billion rupees. Officials say the move is aimed at controlling inflationary pressure that can emerge when commercial banks hold more cash than required, while also helping maintain stability in interest rates across the financial sector. Under the arrangement, Nepal Rashtra Bank will return both the principal and interest payments to participating banks on May 20, according to the central bank. The latest measures follows a similar liquidity management operation conducted last month, with the central bank withdrew 30 billion rupees in deposits from banks and financial institutions for a 91-day period. Jagat Guru Shankaracharya Vidhu Shekhar Bharati, one of South Asia's prominent spiritual leaders, has arrived in Kathmandu for a religious visit centered on Nepal's sacred Hindu heritage sites. He landed at Tribhuvan International Airport on a chartered flight and was warmly received by devotees amid traditional welcome ceremonies. A special religious program is expected to be held in the Pashupatinath temple area, where large gatherings of followers are anticipated during his visit. Religious observers say the visit carries symbolic significance, as Nepal is regarded as a shared spiritual hub for both Hindu and Buddhist traditions across the region. Officials and devotees have highlighted that the visit of the Shankaracharya is expected to strengthen cultural and religious ties while drawing attention to Nepal's role in South Asia's spiritual landscape. The Gandaki province government had announced nearly a year ago that the Gurung and Magar languages would be introduced as official languages for official government work. While the decision initially raised great hopes and excitement among local communities, disappointments are growing as it has not been implemented in practice. Rojina Rai with Himal Neopane brings the report.
Many districts of Gandaki province, including Sangja district, have a significant population of both the Magar and Gurung communities. In the province, the Magar community constitutes 18.8% of the population, making it the second largest ethnic group, while the Gurung community accounts for 11%, ranking as the fourth largest. According to the National Census 2021, Sangja district alone is home to 57,278 Magar population and 34,448 Gurung population. Among the indigenous mother tongues spoken in the region, Magar is the most widely used language, followed closely by Gurung. Based on this demographic reality, the Gandaki Provincial Assembly officially passed a bill in 2025 recognizing the Gurung and Magar languages as official languages for the government administration alongside the Nepali.
हुन्न भन्ने आवाज सुनिएन, तसर्थ गण्डकी प्रदेशमा मगर र गुरुङ भाषालाई सरकारी कामकाजको भाषाको रूपमा प्रयोग गर्ने सम्बन्धमा व्यवस्था गर्न बनेको विधेयक सर्वसम्मतिले पारित भएको घोषणा गर्दछु।
The legislative milestone fulfills a long-standing recommendation of the Language Commission of Nepal. The Gandaki provincial government's decision to introduce these languages for official use was initially welcomed with high expectations. However, nearly a year later, there has been little visible progress in the implementation. In response, language training programs have begun in various villages, and local residents are preparing in anticipation of the language being officially adopted in government offices. Padam Gurung, chairperson of the Tamo Yo chose the National Council in Gandaki province, stated that the government policies and campaigns should only be introduced when they can be effectively implemented.
गण्डकी प्रदेश सरकारले गुरुङ र मगर भाषालाई आधिकारिक रूपमा चाहिँ अगाडि बढाए तापनि निर्णय गरे तापनि अहिलेसम्म कुनै किसिमको चाहिँ आधिकारिक धारणा आइसकेको छैन। सरकारको तहबाट चाहिँ यस्ता किसिमको धारणाहरू प्रष्ट रूपमा ल्याउँदाखेरि हामी अन्यल परेका छौँ। तथापि तर हामीले जिल्लामा चाहिँ गुरुङ र मगर भाषालाई तयारी गर्ने कक्षाहरू चाहिँ तर सञ्चालन गरेर तयारी अवस्थामा बसिरहेको अवस्था छ।
Many members of these two communities appear disappointed with the authorities' level of seriousness. Despite this, the communities are preserving their rich cultural traditions and are taking various initiatives to safeguard them for the future generations.
Now, the international news coming up next, but before that, a quick look at our headlines. Nationwide safety drive launched as highways face flood, landslide threats along Kathmandu connectors. Nepal tea exports to India resume after diplomatic breakthrough. Foreign Ministry confirms removal of trade obstacles. Nepal halts registration of new public transport vehicles amid rising traffic congestion, pollution and fuel pressure. Nearly 300 climbers reached top in a single day as season gains momentum. Nepal eyes billion-rupee revenue boost. NATO welcomes U.S. troop deployment to Poland, says security cooperation remains central. And Nepal crushed USA by 122 runs to end League 2 series on high note, boost standings with strong all-round show. Starting off, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is travelling to China on the invitation of the Chinese government, with a visit also marking the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. During the visit, to held from tomorrow till May 26, Prime Minister Sharif is expected to begin his visit in Hangzhou in Zhejiang province, where he will chair a Pakistan-China business-to-business investment conference focused on information technology, telecommunications, energy storage and agriculture.
The visit is expected to further strengthen and deepen political trust, strategic coordination, expand practical cooperation and consolidate the long-standing friendship between the two countries.
The trip will also mark the third consecutive high-profile visit by a foreign leader to China, following recent visits by Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. At least 25 people, including police officers and civilians, were killed on Thursday in two separate attacks linked to organized crime in northern Honduras in Central America, according to the authorities, as the country prepares a crackdown on escalating gang violence. The deadliest attack occurred in the municipality of Trujillo, where 19 people were shot dead with high-caliber weapons in an area affected by long-standing disputes over palm plantations and drug trafficking routes. Security Minister Gerzon Vancelins said that the victims appear to have been executed with rifles and shotguns in a region long dominated by armed groups linked to narcotics trafficking and palm oil operations. In a separate incident near the Guatemalan border in Omoa, police said 5 officers and 1 civilian were killed during a clash between an anti-drug unit and suspected traffickers. The attacks came shortly after Honduras legislature approved new anti-crime measures authorizing greater military involvement in public security and allowing gangs and drug cartels to potentially be classified as terrorist organizations. Thousands of protesters clashed with police in Bangladesh after crowds attempted to seize a man accused of raping a 4-year-old girl, according to the authorities. Police said suspect Monir Hossain has been detained by local residents in Bangladesh's second-largest city of Chattogram and was being handed over to officers on Thursday when tensions erupted among nearly 5,000 people gathered at the scene. Crowds surrounded a police vehicle in an attempt to take custody of the suspect. prompting security forces to deploy reinforcements and fire tear gas while clashes continued for nearly 6 hours. This comes amid growing public anger in Bangladesh over a recent rise in reported violence against women and children, with demonstrations also taking place in the capital Dhaka demanding justice for the victim. Earlier, Prime Minister Tariq Rahman met the girl's family in Dhaka and also pledged swift justice. Business news coming up next. Now, a short breather.
The head of the International Energy Agency has warned that the world oil market risks entering a red zone by the upcoming summer season should there be no progress on ending the Middle East war. NTV World, during a Q&A at the Chatham House think tank in London, said that global energy markets could enter the red zone on supplies in July or August if there are no improvements in the war situation.
And the problem is, end of June, early July, the travel season starts. What does it mean? Typically, oil demand, oil consumption goes up. So these two things, the stocks are eroding. Not new oil is coming from Middle East, and the demand is increasing. This may be difficult, and we may be entering the red zone in July or August if we don't see that there are some improvements in the situation.
He further added that continued instability could tighten global supply conditions further, increasing volatility in oil prices and heightening energy security concerns for the importing countries. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held talks with Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis in New Delhi during a state visit aimed at expanding economic and strategic cooperation. The two sides oversaw the exchange of agreements and announced the formation of a joint task force focused on boosting collaboration in infrastructure, shipping, and wider economic development. Both governments said the initiative is intended to deepen trade and investment ties and strengthen connectivity between South Asia and Europe through Cyprus as a regional hub. Christodoulidis said Cyprus is uniquely positioned to act as a trusted, stable, reliable bridge between India, the European Union, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the wider Middle East. Officials said the talks are expected to open new opportunities for business partnerships, maritime cooperation, and cross-border investment flows. A wind turbine built as the world's tallest is rising in eastern Germany, winning praise as a beacon for a clean, green energy future. The giant structure, set to dwarf the Eiffel Tower at 365 meters once completed, is going up in the former coal mining region of Lusatia in Brandenburg state. Once its huge rotor blades start spinning before the end of the year, it is expected to generate enough electricity to power 7,500 households. Developers say the project is part of Germany's broader transition away from fossil fuels, particularly in regions historically dependent on coal mining such as Lusatia. Officials also hope the landmark turbine will attract investment in renewable energy infrastructure while serving as a symbol of industrial transformation in the area. Now, sports update.
Nepal women's national cricket team continued its strong form in Malaysia with a 7-wicket victory over Malaysia women's national cricket team in a practice match ahead of the Asian Games qualifiers. Batting first in the T20 match played in Malaysia, the hosts were restricted to 82 runs for the loss of 9 wickets in 20 overs, with Aina Hamiraj Hashim scoring 17 and Dhanushree Mahunan adding 15 runs. Nepal's bowlers delivered an impressive performance as Kavita Kuwar, Riya Sharma and Rubina Chhetri played 2 wickets each to keep Malaysia under pressure throughout the innings. In reply, Nepal comfortably chased down the target in 16 overs, losing just 3 wickets, with Samjana Kumari Khadka top scoring with 39 runs while Kavita Kuwar contributed 19 runs. The victory marked Nepal's second consecutive win over Malaysia this week after also defeating the hosts in the opening practice match played on Wednesday. And now the weather updates, first from across Nepal and then the world. And before we wrap up, here's a reminder of our top stories. Nationwide safety drive launched as highways face flood, landslide threats along Kathmandu connectors. Nepal tea exports to India resume after diplomatic breakthrough. Foreign Ministry confirms removal of trade obstacles. Nepal halts registration of new public transport vehicles amid rising traffic congestion, pollution and fuel pressure. Nearly 300 climbers reached top in a single day as season gains momentum. Nepal eyes billion-rupee revenue boost. NATO welcomes US troop deployment to Poland, says security cooperation remains central. And Nepal crushed USA by 122 runs to end League 2 series on high note, boost standings with strong all-round show. That's it for this edition of NTV News Hour. Do join us through our social sites and get the latest updates from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. I'm Diksha Awasthi. Thank you for staying with us. Have a wonderful time ahead.